Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for coming. I call this meeting to order. Today is October 20, 2017, and this meeting is taking place at the Department of Consumer Affairs, HQ2 Hearing Room, 1747 North Market Boulevard, Sacramento, California, 95834, This meeting is also being webcasted. The time is now 9:11. Mark, please establish a quorum by taking a roll call attendance.
Thank you, Dr. Amy Matecki.
Present?
Kipman Chan.
Yeah, present.
Francisco Shea. Absent. Jeannie Kang.
Present.
Ruben Osorio.
Present.
4-0, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mark. Please note that due to the vacancy created by my stepping into the role of president, and per the administrative menu, I have asked Kidman Chen to act as vice president for the rest of the calendar year. And thank you, Kidman. Please, Kidman has graciously accepted the position. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now the board has 2 board member vacancies. They are both governor appointees. One is for a licensed member and one for a public member. I would like to encourage any interested party to apply. If interested, board staff will help you direct you to the application process. Please note, I also want to say today we really have a busy agenda. If board members are okay for public comments, I would like to limit 2 minutes for each public comments. If there's no objection from the board members, let's. Okay. So I have been informed that Chris Castrillo, the department's new deputy director of the board and bureau services, is present today and would like to address the board. Mr. Castrillo, please step forward. Welcome.
Point of order, this is requesting to move the items for public comment not on the agenda to this point right now so that we can have Chris Castrillo present for us.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Dr. Matecki. Thank you, board members, for having me here today. Christopher Castrillo, new Deputy Director for the Office of Board and Bureau Services, was appointed on October 9th, 2017, so I am fresh into my second week on the job. Really looking forward to working with you all. As you are aware, we have some new faces in the DCA Executive Office as well. Just a little bit more about myself. I come to DCA with a background in public policy and campaign management, having most recently worked as a legislative advocate where I covered a variety of policy areas including labor, higher education, youth mental health, foster care, healthcare, and local government, to name a few. I've also worked on candidate and initiative campaigns in both California and Oregon. While new to the DCA family, I'm greatly looking forward to the opportunity to applying my experience and skill set towards establishing an Office of Board and Bureau Services that implements the goals laid out in our strategic plan, exemplifies organizational effectiveness, and provides relevant, timely, and accurate information to all of our stakeholders. We are also looking forward to a few new faces joining our team. Karen Nelson and Patrick Lee will be coming on board as our Assistant Deputy Directors in the Office of Board and Bureau Services. Mr. Lee has been an Assistant Chief of External Affairs at Covered California since 2015, and Ms. Nelson has been Chief Operations Officer at the American Leadership Forum Mountain Valley Chapter since 2014. We're very excited to have them aboard, and you will be hearing from them after they begin their service on October 30th. Additionally, the department is welcoming a new Chief Deputy Director, Chris Schultz, and a new Deputy Director of Administration, Natalie Daniel. Before coming to DCA, Mr. Schultz served as a Commissioner of Community Programs and Policy Initiatives at the California Department of Insurance since 2011. Mr. Schultz will begin with the department on October 30th. Ms. Daniel has been a fiscal supervisor at the Judicial Council of California since 2015 and will be starting with the department on November 7th. She will be overseeing the department's Office of Human Resources, Business Service Office, and Fiscal Operations. And while I'm here, I'll just give you folks a couple of items that are coming up. We've been doing a DCA leadership training. The department officially kicked off its new Future Leadership Development Program in May 2017 and recently held a kickoff meeting with program participants and mentors on Monday, August 28th. The next meeting of the Future Leadership Development participants will be Tuesday, October 24th with Senator Jerry Hill. Expanding upon the department's current Leadership Academy training, the department is looking forward to helping the best and brightest among the department and its boards and bureaus into its future leaders. The program includes executive mentoring, customized leadership training, and project management. We also have an upcoming Pro Rata open house on November 14th, and a Pro Rata workshop for the Pro Rata work group of DCA and board executives will be held on October 31st. One last item regarding required board member trainings. The final board member orientation training in 2017 is scheduled for November 15th. There is still room for the class if you need to register. Board members are required to complete this training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to a board. It's a one-day training in Sacramento which details the important functions and responsibilities of board members. Please contact DCA's Solid team if you are interested in attending, or board members can also register online. One last reminder that 2017 is also a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year for the Department of Consumer Affairs. This means that all employees and board members are required to complete the training in 2017, even if it was completed last year. The training is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. If you have any questions on this or any of the required trainings during your tenure, please don't hesitate to contact my office. As always, the department can be of service to the board. Thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to working with you over the coming years. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Castrillo.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments for items not on the agenda? No other comments? So we will move to the agenda item 3. So Jeannie Kong and I were part of ad hoc committee created to review the draft sunset report that we will be reviewing later today. Your review of the sunset report, which will be brought for a board vote later in the meeting. Any public comments on the items? Let's proceed to the agenda item 4.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Matecki. We're going to be enjoying a presentation from Matt Sheehan. He is an environmental scientist with the California Department of Public Health. We were about a month and a half ago, Matt approached us regarding some outreach that his department was doing regarding medical waste management and some laws and regulations that are directly directly impact our licensee population. And we met with them and had a really good meeting, and we've arranged for him to present on the laws and some of the provisions of it that pertain to acupuncture. So, Matt, please.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak here today. I'm with the California Department of Public Health.
Can you turn your mic on, Matt?
Oh. It's good? Okay. In the Medical Waste Management Program, I'd like to speak with you all today about the Medical Waste Management Act as it applies to acupuncturists.
Can we drop the screen? Thank you. Members, the PowerPoint presentation is also in the public packet, so.
There we go. I'll start with a brief introduction of the Medical Waste Management Act, including why acupuncturists are considered medical waste generators, why acupuncture needles are considered medical waste, containment and disposal options for sharps waste, and finally registration requirements for acupuncturists. The Medical Waste Management Act is sections 117-600 through 118-360 of the California Health and Safety Code. The Act governs medical waste management at the facility where waste is generated, at transfer stations, and at treatment facilities. First definition I have for you today is a medical waste generator, which means any person whose act or process produces medical waste and includes a provider of health care as defined in section 56.05 of the Civil Code. So if you go to the Civil Code, it defines a provider of health care as any person licensed or certified pursuant to Division II of the Business and Professions Code. And if you go to the Business and Professions Code, you'll find acupuncturists are listed in Division II, Chapter 12, meaning that they are medical waste generators. What is medical waste? The Act has a multi-page definition on what medical waste is, but what applies here is sharps waste generated in a healthcare setting in the diagnosis, treatment, immunization, or care of humans. And if you go to the Act for the definition of sharps waste, you'll find acupuncture needles listed there, meaning that they are considered medical waste. Proper containment of sharps waste. The Act is pretty clear here. It says place all sharps waste in a sharps container. Luckily, there is a definition for sharps container. And the key points of that are it's a rigid, puncture-resistant container that has received approval from the United States Food and Drug Administration. So containers like this are going to meet the definition in the Act. They're available at any medical supply company. What won't meet the definition are old milk containers or soda bottles, paper or cardboard containers. Treatment methods for medical waste. Sharps waste must be rendered non-infectious prior to disposal by one of the following methods: incineration, steam sterilization, or disinfection using an alternative treatment method approved by the department. And what this means for acupuncturists is they can't dispose of acupuncture needles directly into the trash. It has to be treated first. Transport of medical waste. Medical waste can only be transported to a medical waste transfer station or treatment facility by the United States Postal Service via a mailback system or by a medical waste transporter. And what this means for acupuncturists is they can't drive their own waste to a treatment facility or even a household hazardous waste facility. It has to be picked up or mailed. State versus local enforcement agencies. The state is the enforcement agency for medical waste, California Department of Public Health, for 25 counties and 1 city. Local enforcement agencies, LEAs, who are usually the local county environmental health departments, are enforcement for 33 counties and 2 cities. And this is important because practitioners must register with the correct agency, and it's based on where they work, not where they live. In the map there, you can see the darker colored sections are state, and the lighter colors are overseen by the counties or a couple cities. All acupuncturists will likely be small quantity generators of medical waste, and the definition of that is a medical waste generator that generates less than 200 pounds per month of medical waste. And when the department is the enforcement agency, we have an annual fee of $25 a year. Registration form and mailing instructions can all be found on our department website. Registration in LEA cities and counties. Small quantity generator fees and registration forms vary by location. Practitioners in LEA counties and cities should contact their agency directly. And we do have a list of LEA areas and contact information on our website as well. And I've also left handouts on the desk there if anyone would like one. So in closing, acupuncture needles must be disposed of in a US FDA-approved sharps container. The waste must be rendered non-infectious at a medical waste treatment facility. The waste must be transported by a medical waste hauler or the US Postal Service. And acupuncturists must register with either the California Department of Public Health or a local enforcement agency, depending on the county or city the practitioner works in. And there's my contact information on our website. We intend to begin actively registering acupuncturists in the coming months, and we want to inform the board first. Are there any questions for me? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I am grateful that our stakeholders are here. We would like this information especially sent out to the schools, and we have created an alert on our website about this as well. Any members of the professional associations, if you could please spread this word as well. Thank you.
Any comments from board members? Any comments from the public? Yes.
I assume the registration, if it's a multi-practitioner clinic, is done by the clinic and not by each individual? Correct.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No? Okay, let's move on to the item 5. Ben, please.
Thank you, Dr. Matecki. For the staff update, I want to report to the board that we presently have one vacancy in the licensing unit. We have been holding interviews and we weren't able to find someone during the first round, so we've submitted for a second round of application gathering. We'll keep the board posted on when we fill that position. In addition, we would like to bring to the board's attention as well as to our stakeholders that we are looking for more subject matter experts, both in enforcement, in exams, in terms of exam development and review, as well as in education. We have an application on our website that's available for you to fill out and submit to the board. We are especially looking for licensees that have dual licenses, so they have experience working with other health professions. Thank you. That is all for the staff update. Are there any questions from the board regarding the staff update?
Who do I need to talk to get on one of these?
We'll
I've been asking
look
for like a couple
into
years now.
whether or not, as a board member, we can use you as a subject matter expert. We'll look into that and get back to Jane.
It's happened before.
Okay. Any additional questions and comments? For the budget update, since we're here in Sacramento, I've asked the board's budget analyst to come down and explain to us our fund condition and expenditures today. Good morning, Matt. This is Matt Nishimine.
Matt Nishimini with the DCA Budget Office. It's a pleasure to be here again with the board this morning. Typically, I would be here providing you with year-to-date expenditure and revenue projections, as well as a projection, a year-end projections. However, this morning, I don't have any of that data. So if you'll just allow me a few minutes to explain, I will. So several years ago, the administration, in an effort to modernize the state's IT systems, adopted the FISCAL system. And the FISCAL system, it's FISCAL, you can look at it online, is an effort to modernize the systems and to bring budgeting and procurement and accounting all under the same systems. before they were disparate systems and didn't talk to each other. You must also remember that the old CalSTAR systems reports, which I would have provided to you, were pretty antiquated. Those systems and the other IT systems that the state was implementing really began their service in the 60s and 1970s. And during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, they were kept up with patches. Well, we can't go on indefinitely with that, in part because a lot of the institutional knowledge those people were passing on. And so those systems needed to be replaced. And thus we came to the fiscal system. So the budget office and the accounting and procurement offices and DCA have been transitioning to the fiscal system over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, at this time, we do not have any reports that we can pull from the system. So I do not have any expenditure or revenue or projections for you. We anticipate having our first reports sometime next month in November. So to date, we have no concerns with the board's expenditures because the board has been operating basically status quo. We've not approved any extraordinary expenditures or spending. So we anticipate that the board is pretty much on track where it was last year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Look at the analyzed fund condition, the revenue and expenditure is not balanced. The expenditures are always over the revenue. And we are operated from the 4 million, the general fund reported, returned it to the board. And in the next month or so, when you have a projection, and how I think the way we operated, the 4 million we received from the general fund probably is spent all of them already. And we have a 1 million that's going to be returned by general fund in the year 2019 and 20. And by the time, if we're keeping the expenditure over the revenue, and the bond, the financial condition is not going to look pretty good. So I think in the next month or so, when the computer generate some kind of report to analyze and how to make the expenditure and the revenue as a balance. And so we right now look at the trend, and so we are going down the reserve from 10 to 9. And by the time year 2019 and 20, probably in the 8 or 7 or sometimes 6. And then we are not, if we don't cut the expenditure and generate more revenue, and I think the board is going to face the shortage of cash flow. So I hope next time you can give us some kind of the budget for the next couple of years. So how do we have balance out the cash in and cash out?
Yes, sir. I certainly appreciate your comments. And yes, the board is operating in a structural imbalance with expenditures exceeding revenues, as it has been doing for some time. As you noted, the fund balance reserve is about 9 months, but it is declining. Typically, a healthy reserve balance is somewhere between 2 and 6 months. So we would say that the board has a very healthy fund balance reserve. But as you point out, yes, it is declining. So operationally, there are two mechanisms. You can either increase fees or cut expenditures, as you're saying. To cut expenditures, that would be undertaken by the board, and to increase revenues, that would be actions undertaken by the board. So I would defer to the board, but yes, we can certainly work with board staff and the board to come up with a plan moving forward. As you note that the board has sufficient funds to remain solvent for several years, but now is the time to analyze that, as you point out.
Matt, we've gone over this cycle many times, and I've heard Kitman say this, and I've heard you say the same thing. Is this just the way the data is written up with those type of 10 months, 9 months, and the expenditures being higher than the income? Is that just the way structurally how things are written financially? Because we've had this discussion many times, and each time Kitman says that, you say what you say, and I feel like we're in a
So-
cycle here.
The board's spending is subject to the annual appropriation and the annual budget cycle. So your appropriation, and then it builds on the next year. So we're in the current year is 17-18, so you have your appropriation. We're currently building the 18-19 budget, and we will build upon the 17-18 budget. So it's going to increase. Increase for retirement, for employee compensation, for other activities. If the board has a BCP in front of the administration, so all of these things will increase costs. Revenues, to the extent revenues stay flat, yes, it will exacerbate the structural imbalance.
Got it, okay.
But those are all set, and they are set moving forward.
Perpetually, yeah,
Right.
okay.
So
got it.
unless the board takes action to either decide, hey, maybe we don't need to do X, Y, and Z activities, and then you could cut expenditures. Or perhaps the board would say, no, we need to be vigilant and we need to keep all of the enforcement and licensing activities intact, but we need more revenue. So the board at that time would have to analyze fees.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
So your budget for the next couple of years is based on the annual increase of the expenditure by 2% every year.
In out years, we generally make a projection of 2 to 3% growth for expenditures. And that would account for things like employee comp and retirement increases, which are statewide increases.
3% annual increase.
And it's an estimate. And so then what we do is we go back in and we will make the correction afterwards, once the Budget Act is implemented.
So after you issue the budget, can you revise during the time if something happens?
Revise.
Yeah, because, like for example, right now we had a fire in the Northern California, and the budget, I just used that example, and then the budget is not budget or the fire, and can you change the budget if something happens?
So the board has flexibility to increase its Attorney General and Office of Administrative Law, so enforcement-related costs each year. The Budget Act has language that provides authority for the board to submit a deficiency request and increase those expenditures. If it were a reduction on the other side, that would be an operational choice that your executive officer would make to cut costs.
Matt, I have a question. Is there a certain level that we have, level that we have to have before the department or the state will consider us having a fee survey to change or increase our fees? Is there a threshold?
There is no set standard because each fund is and each board operates in such a different fashion. If you had a rapidly declining fund balance, then we would certainly want to review that. Your fund is going to remain solvent for the next several years. However, it does provide you a perfect opportunity now to start beginning those conversations. Also, your budget currently, you're currently reverting or saving about $270,000, $250,000 is what you did last year. A fee analysis is going to cost $40,000 or $50,000. To the extent the board has savings, you may want to have a fee analysis done. Also, I'll just add to that. So generally speaking, to raise fees, you can do it two ways. You can do it statutorily or you can do it regulatorily. So generally, the fees are capped by statute, and then they're implemented through regulations. So to the extent you want to raise your fees regulatorily, that can happen within about a span of about 12 months. If you need to have your statutes changed and your law changed, you're looking more at a 2-year process. One to get the bill through, and then one to get the regulations through.
Matt, is that a common thing other boards do when there's a certain fee that has not been changed in 15, 20 years? Is that a common practice for other boards to go through either a statutory or regulatory, and what's the difference between one or the other?
Right.
For
So
boards like us.
yes. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Good to know.
So all of the boards and bureaus, their fees are set in statute. So there's a cap. For example, you might have $1,000 for a license cap. However, through regulations, the fee might be set at $500. So it would just take a regulatory change to increase it from $500 to $1,000. That process would take about a year. However, if you were already at the cap, say your regulations were at $1,000 as well, but you needed to go to $1,500, then you would need the law change. So you'd have to have a bill. And then once that bill gets passed, you would have to implement regs to increase it to $1,500. So that's a 2-year process.
And the cap is written into the regs? I mean,
It's in statute, it's in the law.
Statute. So we have to look at our statute, see what the cap is, and then if we've already capped out, then we go to statutory. Okay.
Correct. So a fee analysis can do several things. It can examine your fee structure to make sure you're capturing all the right licensees, and then it can also look at the fee amount to make sure that you're in line with other license types, similar license types. So to the extent it hasn't been done, I would encourage it. I would encourage this board to have a fee analysis done. Now remember though, if at what point do you want to implement it? You don't want to have it done and then have it sit on the shelf for a couple of years, because
Right.
then it becomes less accurate.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you
Thanks,
for having me
Matt.
here again this morning.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Next item for the executive officer's report is the outreach update. And we'll be talking a little bit more about some of this later when we discuss the stakeholder meeting. But we have had a stakeholder meeting to review some of the curriculum requirements presently in place for the board. And again, those details will follow. In addition, the board has posted the Acupuncture Association list, an updated version on our website, along with an information form for more associations to provide us information about themselves and the services they provide to our professional licensees. So we encourage all the associations for acupuncture, alumni associations for schools that offer services to their licensees as well as their students to please provide that information for us. Next item on the agenda. I'm sorry, are there any questions regarding the outreach effort? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the strategic plan update. Again, with the stakeholders meeting that we held on July 28th, we were able to approach item 3.1 on our strategic plan, which is the evaluation of curriculum standards to ensure professional qualifications and safety. And in addition, and well, again, we'll get to those details later on in this meeting. In addition, the board is is no longer having to review the financial condition of institutions, as that responsibility has been given to ACOM, the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. They are the experts when analyzing an institution's financial condition, and is now one of the 3 approvals required to be an approved training program. Additionally, the board is board staff is reviewing item 3.4, which is TOEFL requirements for foreign applicants, so that we can maintain the same standards required of our domestic applicants as we have for our foreign. Currently, foreign applicants are not required to take the TOEFL to qualify for the licensing exam, whereas students that are taking a foreign language track at a current federally approved institution must have TOEFL for them to be able to attend that institution. Any questions from board members? Comment?
Any public comments? Nope. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is the enforcement report. Christine?
I just wanted to note that the actual quarter that the enforcement report is on is quarter 4 of 2016-2017. So that covers months April 1st to June 30th. And during that quarter, we received a total of 96 complaints. And we were closed and referred to investigation 78 complaints. The average intake time was 3 days. Of the 27 criminal charges and convictions that were received, 18 were received on applicants and 9 were received on licensees. There's also a complaint volume table that shows professional conduct as the highest volume. The investigations table, during quarter 4, we had 76 investigations initiated. At the close of quarter 4, we had 137 investigations pending, and we closed 110 investigations. The total average days for processing an investigation was 135 days. For disciplinary actions, there were 7 disciplinary actions that were requested of the AG's office, 16 cases pending at the Attorney General's office, and we filed 5 accusations and statement of issues. 2 decisions became effective, resulting in probation, and the average overall process time was 596 days, and that's from complaint receipt to the effective date of the decision. There were 26 citations issued, and at the close of quarter 4, there were 40 probation cases being monitored. So the last section, we just did a trend analysis where we compared quarter 4 last fiscal year 15-16 to this quarter of 16-17. What we saw for complaint trends is we saw an increase in complaints compared to this time last year from 82 to 96, which represents a 17% increase in volume. For the investigation trends, it is noted that all areas of investigation changed significantly from last year to this year, with the exception of investigations initiated. Last year's quarter 4 had 203 investigations pending at the close of the quarter, whereas this year's quarter 4 had 137 investigations pending. This reflects a 33% decrease in pending investigations. This quarter also saw a decrease in the average investigation time by 35%. For formal discipline trends, this quarter shows a 75% increase in complaints referred to the Office of the Attorney General for discipline, going from 4 complaints referred last year's quarter 4 to 7 complaints referred this year's quarter 4. In fiscal year 16-17, there were just 2 decisions that became effective, and last year there were 7 decisions that became effective. The most noteworthy change in the discipline stats is the significant decrease in the average overall process time from complaint receipt to the effective date of the decision. Last year's quarter 4, the average overall process time for disciplinary actions was 1,301 days, whereas the average overall process time for this quarter 4 in 16-17 was 596 days, which is a 54% decrease. That's my report.
Any
questions or comments?
Yeah. No, this is great work. I mean, we talk a lot about this section over the years, and you're doing a great job. And like the way things are written up, I think really helps me. I really look at this section, so I really see the improvements that you guys are making, and I congratulate you guys. I mean, I don't know exactly what it is that is helping us get to these numbers, and but it's really appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Please.
Jack Marmarco, Empress College, Academic Dean. I was wondering if you could specify that 17% increase, that's quite a drastic increase within a calendar year. Was there a specific area that these investigations were looking at?
Sure.
Thank you.
I do highlight that the highest jump in volume was among the unprofessional conduct complaints, which increased from 7 last year to 46. And the majority of those complaints were actually sort of internal complaints that we found from address violations, which were the results of return mail from a board notification that was sent. So that's where that came from.
So I think that was covered in a prior meeting, that address violation, and I believe, a lot of the practitioners are not complying with that time frame, so we need to get the word out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No? Okay.
Before we go on, Christine, is there any way we could better handle the address violations? I mean, is it our database that's, we have like old database, or are they just moving around and we don't,
Yeah, they're possibly moving around, or they're just not notifying us within those 30 days that they've had an address change. Some of the issues we've seen are from the post office, which those get worked out. But the majority is just not getting that notification from the licensee.
So instead of doing it like, snail mail, is there like, legally speaking, is there a way where they can do that online?
We actually have gone away from doing it online. We used to allow it, but being that we'd like it to actually come from the licensee and have proof of that, we are now requiring it come through mail with an original signature requesting an address change, so we know it's from them.
Was there a problem doing it online? Was there some issue?
We didn't see any fraudulent activity or anything like that. We just saw that it was open to that because anybody really could submit it. And so until we're on Breeze, there isn't any like individual sign-in and password that they could have an account to actually submit it through that.
Okay.
So
when the Breeze kicks in,
yeah,
then this going back to online is a possibility where we can cut down these numbers.
yes,
So it's not like a very strong violation. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
It can lead to a strong violation though, because a lot of times
Right.
if they're not
Current.
yeah, they could
The
become not current in
responsibilities
their
that
license.
That gets backed up. Yeah, I understand that. So we're waiting for Breeze. All right, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it the fluctuation because of the timing, reporting, the reporter in cut off? Because, you have some is decrease substantially, and some is increase a lot. So is it because of timing difference, the reporting, and the reporter in cut off, and that's why it caused the increase and decrease so much?
What exact area of are you talking about in the complaint level or the investigations or at discipline? What time frames are you talking about? Are you asking about?
So I'm talking about, you compare the quarter previous year,
Uh-huh.
and the numbers, some is increased, some is decreased. I was wondering, is it the timing difference because they cut off? And there's so many cases you put in that quarter, and so many cases not in that quarter. That's why you have the comparison. Do they? I mean, is it a timing difference? If something is a loss of case is coming this quarter, and then the percentage is high, then you compare the last year because what happened the last year in the same quarter, not many cases.
Right.
So the percentage probably is effectively a lot. So
Yeah.
is it the percentage increases we're not at a basis to analyze because depends on how many cases each
Sure.
quarter and reporting period.
Were you asking, should I answer a question, or are you just kind of making that notation? Yeah, I agree, yes.
Thank you, Tina. No comments from the public? Okay, let's move to the next agenda, item 7. Right, education report,
Mr. Hurd?
please.
One thing I wanted to note on the agenda, there was an error in the listing on item B. I won't be speaking about, well, I will speak of the Bureau, but I'm not really giving an update in that way. And the American College of Acupuncture was misnoted. So what item B should be would be the status of applications for board approval of curriculum. I don't know how we have to note that, but.
Well, and there's a typo in that ACOM is spelled out as the American College of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, where it should be the Accreditation Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. So we do apologize for that typo.
Okay, so acupuncture training programs, there are currently 34 approved acupuncture training programs as defined by Business and Profession Code section 4927 5A. And the status of curriculum compliance as of Q4 2017, 18 programs are in full compliance. I'm just going to read through them real quickly, just to call out those schools. Alhambra University in Alhambra, American College of Traditional Chinese Medicine in San Francisco, Atlantic Institute of Oriental Medicine in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, College of Eastern Medicine at Southern California University of Health Science. This is their master's program, Whittier, California. 5 Branches University, Santa Cruz, 5 Branches University, San Jose, the Institute for Clinical Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine in Honolulu, Hawaii, Kingston University in Norwalk, California, Maryland University for Integrated Health in Laurel, Maryland, 9-Star University of Health Science in Southern Valley, California, Oregon College of Oriental Medicine in Portland, Oregon, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in Chicago, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in New York, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine in San Diego. There's a lot of Pacific there. Phoenix Institute of Herbal Medicine and Acupuncture in Phoenix, Arizona. University of South Los Angeles in Gardena, California. Yosan University, Los Angeles, California. And Ewan University in Compton, California. The following 3 programs have completed their clinical corrective actions and have had their curriculum reviewed by staff. These programs are now in the process of submitting corrective action to address the issues of noncompliance raised by staff. Those are Dongguk University, Los Angeles, Southern California University School of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine, Los Angeles, California, and the University of East-West Medicine in Sunnyvale. And then the following 2 programs are in the process of curriculum review by staff. They actually have been completed. South Baylor University, Anaheim, California, and Golden State University, Downey, California. There are 10 training programs that have submitted their curriculum and clinical corrective actions that are pending staff review of their curriculum. Of those 10, 3 of them are in-state. And the 3 in-state, there's no reason for that. They just haven't been gotten to yet. There's no issues with any of the programs. Any of the programs that haven't been reviewed have good relationships with the board.
Mr. Hurd, point of order.
Yeah.
We had discussed that there was a typo for ACOM. You had mentioned that there's a different report that you're providing.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate, because we can only talk about what's agendized?
Well, it's the new application for board approval of curriculum.
Okay, well, that's not agendized, so we won't be able to talk about that. Just
we'll
please
just
stay to the compliance reviews and move forward to the other 2 items.
So then that completes the compliance reviews. And then for continuing education applications processed through the close of Q3 were 2,089. The number of continuing educated providers with current and valid approval status is 540. For acupuncture tutorials, at the close of Q3, there were 33 active tutorials in process, 4 tutorial applications in process, and 2 tutorials were completed during that period. And that concludes my report.
So Jay, just within January to September, we had 2,089 applicants.
For continuing education, they're not applicants, they're each course approval gets evaluated individually, so that was for, that number of courses were applied for approval to the board. 2,089 courses were approved.
Courses.
Yeah, courses. not
Were.
providers.
Okay, got it. Providers is 540.
Right.
Still high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, you know, earlier we had some numbers that didn't really adjust for the active providers, so this is a really good number of who's really actively participating. And actually, the real trend is, I'd probably say about 20 of these providers are doing the bulk of the courses, and then there's a number of them that do one or two, not very many courses. So.
Now, as far as the 2,089, is that comparatively average with other boards?
Well, I don't know about other boards, but it's very typical of our numbers, you know, compared to last year. We'll expect somewhere around 3,500 before the end of the year.
Got it.
That's typical. I mean, it's really driven by our licensee population because they're required to complete those as, their renewal process for their licensure.
50 hours, yeah. Got it. Thank you. Yes. Public comments, please.
Jack Marco, Empress College, Academic Dean. The number is 10 a day, and that's really worrisome. 10 of these classes every day in the state of, or out of state, that are being conducted for the CUs, right? 3,500, that's 10 a day. My concern is, again, and it has been brought up, is this online component. The online component where the students are really not getting any hands-on, their skill sets are not improving, and we really need to look at that to see if these live online, and I brought that up in past meetings, these live onlines are getting counted as live because of this so-called gray area where the provider or the attendee say, well, it is live, so they have seat time, but I had mentioned one of those classes had 3 people seat time, and they had 200 people across the country online. And, how much are you going to be able to improve your skill set just doing everything online? I know it's 50%, but I wonder how many of those 50% are really violated, where the 50%, it is live, but it's not seat time, where the student does not perform. Seat, like it's seated in a classroom versus online, and it's somewhat concerning. So if we can, look a little bit deeper into it at another time. I know that's not an agenda item, but it's somewhat, the numbers are quite worrisome for me. Thank you. From the educational standpoint.
Thank you. Is that something that could be agendized, or how does that work, Sawa?
We have an agenda item to talk about agenda items for future meetings. That's item number 17.
Okay.
So at that time, once we reach that point, we can talk about, for example, including that on a future
Good.
agenda.
Yeah, this has come up so many times. It looks like something we need to look at. Right. Okay.
Any other public comments? No? Okay, let's move to the next item, number 8. For examination update, Terry, please.
Hi. I'm going to summarize the exam statistics. And the first sheet I would like to go over is the statistics by language. I want to note that the first section indicates that we had 229 test takers. The overall pass rate for first-time test takers is 75%. If you look across the columns from English, 75%, Chinese, 75%, and Korean, 77%, you'll see that all language groups seem to test at a close range. And the re-examinee list is the first-time test takers subtracted the overall test takers. It subtracts, it takes the overall test takers and subtracts the first-time test takers, which gives the list of the re-examinees. You'll note that the re-exam test rate ranges in 24% for English, 24% for Chinese, and 40% for Korean, with an overall pass rate of 27% for retakers. The overall pass rate is the domain of retakers and first-time test takers, and it has 56% for English, 56% for Chinese, and 60% for Korean. And there were 382 test takers at the August 2017 exam. I'm going to read, kind of summarize the sheet for first-time retaker and overall. Each college is listed for approved schools, and then there's tutorials and foreign equivalency students at the bottom. We had a group of 229 first-time test takers. As you can see, it has a 75% pass rate. You'll note the range was from 25 all the way to 100%, depending on how many people took the test. The retaker is the middle column. It is the overall pass rate subtracting the first-time test taker pass rate. And there's a range all the way from 100 down to the lowest of 19%. This could be due to how long ago the student graduated from a program. And as you can see, it's 27% pass rate, although it varies between school. And then overall pass rate is 56%, and there were 382 test takers.
Okay, Terry?
So I have a question, like, there were 3 different schools where it was just 0-0, like they're not giving out, they're not taking the test, like.
For example, Bastyr,
Uh-huh.
they had 2 first-time test takers. They both passed.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no retakers listed because it goes from the first-time test takers and the overall are matching. So there was no retakers. I think you're also referring to East West College. There was one test taker who was a first-time test taker, and that person didn't pass. And so if there was no retakers, there wouldn't be a listing in the middle column.
Right. So for the schools that like didn't pass or didn't fail, like Trinity and New England and what is it? There's like a 0-1. They just didn't. There was nobody in that school just took the exam.
In Samra, there was one person who was
Like in the Trinity.
in Trinity,
Right, so
California
it's-
Trinity.
That is correct. They did not. There were no applicants that completed the approved program at that institution for this exam.
There were retakers, and that's why there's 2 in the fail column. And
So there were
in the
2
overall.
retakers, but there were no new.
There were no first-time test takers.
Okay. And so in the New England school, the same. Like there was 1 retaker, but there was no one that took the exam.
There was
that
no one that was a first-time test
First, that's what I mean. Like first time taker for that time period for 2017, and that same goes to Samra.
Samra, yes. There was a first-time test taker, and that person did not pass.
So,
And SAMR closed in 2010.
right. So that's what
And the
I'm,
reason why that person might have wanted to test is because there was going to be some change in the regulation, and the old requirements that had less clinical hours and less verbal hours was repealed in May. That may have had an impact on somebody deciding to test.
So I guess my question is, we're approving these schools that are not putting forth students that are taking the test, and I'm not getting why.
California Trinity is no longer accepting students. They're no longer board approved.
Oh, okay. So then
So
why
they're
is
just
it?
going backwards. These are, and if you note on the list, it'll show which and they have a date range, it's when they stopped operating.
Okay,
But California Trinity stopped admitting students over 2 years ago.
so it's still listed, however.
Only on that, it's not listed on our approved school list, it's listed on, because they still can send test takers.
They've completed the required curriculum
Oh, okay,
and
so
they
they're
can now
just
sit for
finishing
the
up
exam.
Right, it's
ones
just-
that are
those
still
should
there,
disappear.
so after a while, they shouldn't even be on this list.
Right.
Like, there should be no 000 on this list, I mean, it doesn't make sense for us to be
Well,
there.
and NESA, the New England school, is
Mhm.
on the East Coast, and they typically don't send many applicants, but they are board approved.
But if it's easier on board members, we can definitely take out any schools that have not sent any students to the exam for that, or any students completing a program from that
Yeah, it's
institution. Clean it up a bit.
Yeah.
There's
Yes,
no
understood.
I'm sorry, there's no one that's 000 across all
Cross
the
the
way.
board, okay.
They have a
1 0
retaker
or 0
if they
2,
don't have
yeah.
a first time test taker.
Mhm.
Right,
I had a question. Look at this passing score. The first time, the last few years, always in the 70 to 75% pass. The retaker is always in 25 to 30%, and then make the overhaul is at 50 to 60% pulling down. I look at that, this thing, I just wondering, did the school do something for the student fail in the first time and doing some preparation for the second time? Why, if the school, if paid to help them, why the second time the pass rate is so low? Do the school have to do something to encourage the taker to study harder, or have more courses to let them to learn to face the examination, make them a pass? And look at it, the last 5 years, always this taker is always so low. And from the school, for example, the South Bayer University, the taker total 52 per person to take the exam, 42 is a fail, 10 is pass. Then do the school do something about to encourage the student to how do they prepare to taking the exam, and what courses, and why they keep failing? I mean, I think the school have to address some of that.
Is it a good time to address that?
Not yet.
yeah.
Ron, not yet.
Oh, not yet.
What data are you looking at? Because I'm looking at South Baylor's 25.
He's looking at the
25.
third chart.
Yeah.
No, the third chart, Jeannie.
No, I'm looking at it, but like, if you're talking about South Baylor, 25 took it, 69% passed, 11 didn't, and then the retakers, 40% passed, so.
Again, not overall is voted again. Take over. The takers are only 19% pass. So
Where is the 19%?
Jeannie, if you turn the page to the third, there you go.
Okay, got it. Any other questions or comments from the board members? No? Now open to the public comments, please.
Ron Zeidman, Five Branches University. Dr. Chan, you've brought up a very important point, and schools like ours and some of our colleagues have the same intention. We want our students who did not pass the first time to pass second or third time. So we send emails, we offer the courses of review for free. We do everything possible so that they can return back to the school and take either a course or study guidelines, whatever it is, because our intention and the students is to pass again. Our experience is that these students, for many different reasons, are not prepared to come back and take these courses. But normally the courses that are paid are offered for free. The schedules are to adapt to their schedule, and yet for some reason or another they don't return.
Is it financial?
It's free. The courses are
No,
free.
but is it financial reasons why they don't take it again, like because they have to pay
I-
again,
it-
or?
I-
Because we don't have data on that.
It could be embarrassment, financial, personally, maybe their lives don't allow it. We're not sure, but we send multiple emails, letters, invitations to offer all the services so that they could pass the exam.
Well, there's several schools that have like 30% or lower numbers. In what Kitman just addressed, the lowest one is 18% at University of East-West Medicine. Then there's 19% at South Belo, 20% at PCOM, 33% 5 branches, and 31% at Dongguk University. So I think some of these data is that we're looking at this, from the analysis that we can do with our tools. But what you just said, Ron, I think is very important. Maybe it's a good idea for the schools to give us some data on why they are not going forward. Because, I've been in these schools, so I understand. It could be financial, it could be, they have to make a living, so they can't sit there and just keep studying for this because they actually have to pay bills. So that kind of data will support what we're doing and have a better communication of, rather than this kind of dialogue,
Yeah.
better understanding of what's going on both sides of the aisle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jacques Mormarco, Academic Dean at First College. I agree with my colleague there. And at the end of the day, you've been here for years and you see which schools are here and you see their score numbers. And it's pretty much interesting that the schools that are involved seem to do better than the ones that never show up here. However, having said that, many years ago, we had this five failure rule. And I am not sure what has happened to that. And I think if the individuals know that they can only take it 5 times, which, we don't seem to have that problem at Empress College. But, other schools, these individuals, are almost like professional test takers. They take it over and over and over. So I don't know if that is put out there. As an example, for our school, people take the mid-curriculum, the preclinical exam. They're only allowed to take it 4 times. If you don't pass by then, you should look at some other way to continue education. So I think the 5 rule could really help them. And we had talked about a remediation process where the people that had come to number 4, they would be automatically needing to take extra hours at the school. So I'm just bringing that up as a reminder that that was discussed, especially the remediation, that the schools would give them a remediation and hours would have to be punched in for these, these test takers. But, the exam is good and you guys are doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Please.
Good morning, everybody. So I just have some questions about this test. I am Jin Jiao. I'm an acupuncturist. So regarding to the California, the acupuncture test, I noticed so many why the student doesn't want to take this test. Is there any other reason for the for future NCCAOM to take care of those? It's more hard to do, right?
I'm sorry, this is not the time for this comment.
Okay, so I don't know.
Well, she can make the comments, it's just not on the agenda, so they cannot discuss.
Because I want to know this test, what's the difference with other tests? Is any student want to take the other test, not this one? That's why. So
The board can't answer your question, but you're welcome to continue your comment.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes.
I misunderstand. Yeah. Okay. So I want to know if, we already passed the test, we have that license right now. If the future, same thing like all the students, they worried is if we take this test, how about future their nation test comes, then they can still use that. use this pass the license to work at California or go to hold American to practice or only California?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
Maybe that's the reason they don't want to take the California test. They can take the nation test.
Can I clarify the question?
It's up
It's
to
not very clearly put. You're asking basically, people are trying to delay taking the California Acupuncture State Board exam, waiting for the national exam.
Yeah,
And
right.
if that would make a
If
change,
that's the
that's what
reason.
she's asking.
Yeah. Then also for us, we already have the license here. And then this license, like California test, is quite good quality. I think better than national. We don't know future how it's gonna work.
Thank you.
Also,
You have 2 minutes.
okay, all right. But we still need to request something for the board to think about the next meeting to talk about the nation test. So I have some material to give to body member to think about.
If you give it to Mark, please. Or, sorry, I'll give it to Mark.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Good morning, still morning. Leandra Clark Harvey, Assembly Committee on Business and Professions. I just want to make a couple comments. One is just a quick observation of this meeting, run very well. Really appreciate the reports from staff, the professionalism, the engagement of the board. It really appears that you all have reviewed the materials and are really on top of your stuff. So it's great to see, especially as you approach sunset review. The question I had regarding this item was, and I'm sorry, my internet went out on my phone, so I'm not able to pull up the report, the meeting materials, but do you all have a breakdown of how much you're spending on the kale, putting that on, quarterly or whenever you're offering it? Was that in the meeting materials that I'm not able to access?
It is not in this meeting material packet. These are just the examination results.
If I could make a request that in preparation for sunset review, if you could have that information detailed, I think that would be very helpful to us to see what type of resources you're expending, et cetera.
In the sunset report.
How much it costs for us to run the kale is in the sunset report.
But not in the meeting
No.
materials today.
Well, the sunset report is in the meeting materials.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to
but
pull it
it's
up.
not on the examination statistics report, so.
Okay, but that has been detailed.
I'm sorry.
That has been detailed in the report already. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other comments from the public?
Madam Harvey Clark, there is a public packet available. Someone may have taken it, but, okay.
It's yours.
It's there.
Oh, great, I'll look there.
Share it, please.
It's in the sunset report in the kale exam part, and it gives you a specific number of how much it costs for the kale to be run.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, no additional comment. Let's move to the next item, number 9. Mark, please
Okay.
provide the regulatory update for the board.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Folks, this is our typical regular format for our updates, so I will just, I'll go through each reg individually just real quickly. The first one is advertising guidelines, display of license number and advertising. The board had been looking at this. We are working internally, staff is working on revising the package to bring to the board. Number 2, the prostitution enforcement and condition of office. The board had approved amended text back in December of last year. We are also working on that. Most of these packages we are working on internally, but I'll talk about that in a minute. The continuing education ethics requirements. The Education Committee had approved revised proposed text at the December meeting. We will be bringing that back to the board. The fourth one is the hand hygiene requirements. This is one that has been a sort of a back burner one. It was approved back in 2014. Also working on that. And then the fifth is probably the most important outstanding one, and that is the 2017 update of our disciplinary guidelines. You may remember that we had approved those revised guidelines back in February of this year. We worked extensively with the Deputy Attorney General's office, worked with council, and worked considerably, a lot of effort on this, and we are hoping to bring that over to OAL. It has to go through a process where all of our materials have to be approved by council and then by the Department of Consumer Affairs. And we're hoping to have that filed with OAL hopefully early next year, sometime next year. That's a very important one because our guidelines have not been updated since 1996, and they're still very functional and useful, but there's been a lot of updates to the law and standards since then. One other thing that I'll note, at the last board meeting in June, I had noted that SB 1246 had been approved and as in effect, and as Jay noted, we are working under that process now. The other one that was also pending with OAL is sponsored free healthcare events. This is a package that allows an out-of-state acupuncturist who is not licensed in California to get a temporary license to practice acupuncture under the auspices of like a free and sponsored healthcare event. You hear a lot about how dentists have free clinics, like they had a big one over at Cal Expo a couple weeks ago. Nurses, things like that. This is in response to a law that the legislature passed. This was approved by OAL. It is in regulation. It actually went into effect on October 1st of this year. And we have already updated our website. There is a link on our website where people can go if they're going to be wanting to register for that and also for the acupuncturist. And there's also an informational page on how the acupuncturist who's out of state will do that. So we're complete with that package, so that's good news. The other thing that I would just also probably note is that we're going to be meeting with legal counsel in the next week or two to review all of our existing regulatory packages that the board has approved in the last couple of years and look at them to determine how we want to go forward. We want to set out kind of a regulatory roadmap. And then we will be coming back to the board in December with any changes to that. I think we're gonna look to maybe consolidate a couple of the packages, and also we've talked about doing an omnibus package in the future. So that'll be something that we'll look to do, possibly combine some of those regulations. So I think in December, hopefully we'll have a little more comprehensive an update about what we're doing with regs. Okay. Any questions?
So no question from the board members or comments? Now open to the public. Thank you.
Jacques Marmarco, Empress College, Academic Dean. So the question was from the prior meeting for those sponsored events, like us at Emperor, we did the veteran stand down and Special Olympics, so we do a lot of veteran work. However, our doctoral students, they're out-of-state licensees. Of course, they cannot perform the acupuncture on these events. And I was wondering if we can get rather the individual licensees to apply, if we can as an institution have that, so that these doctoral students that are out of state and are licensed out of state that cannot do any acupuncture in California can possibly be part of this clause. But they're out of state, like you say, guest acupuncturists. It's similar to visiting scholars. So I was wondering if you can keep that in mind. And also that would, the visiting scholars, they are allowed to come to this country from wherever they are for 6 months and practice. Our doctoral fellows that are out of state cannot, and therefore they cannot participate in these events. Even though they have licensure, out of state licensure, they cannot participate in those events, but also cannot do anything in the treatment. So is the 6 months visiting scholar able to also apply to doctoral fellows and not just to teachers? I mean, that's, I don't know, yeah. Or
Please
is that
submit
an
your
agenda?
comment to the board in
Yeah.
writing, and we can respond to that at the
Okay,
time.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I'm Wei Wei, an acupuncturist. Yeah, and I just wonder what are the requirements for the acupuncturists outside of the state to come here, and if they want to practice acupuncture temporarily, then are there written requirements that are available for us to?
It's on, the full information how the guest acupuncturist can do that is on the Acupuncture Board website. There's a little link under Quick Hits, and it describes the process to do that.
I hope it's pretty strict.
It's
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No? Let's move to the next item.
Okay, thank you, Amy. The next item, members, is just a quick legislative update on bills of interest. You may remember that we went over the bills at the last meeting. The board did not take any positions on legislation. Most of the bills that are listed in here, I'll just go through them real quickly, are all dead for the year, which means that because we're in the midst of a 2-year legislative cycle, the legislature operates on 2-year cycles. The bill will potentially be taken up at the next legislative year, which begins in January. Assembly Bill 12, dealing with administrative regulations, is dead for the year. Assembly Bill 1005, which has to do with fines relief, is dead for the year. Assembly Bill 1190, which kind of pertains to our board a little bit because it discusses the breeze system. It would require, I believe, a quarterly update be posted how breeze is progressing. This bill was actually vetoed by the governor, and he cited in his veto message that there's already existing reports that address the breeze issues. So we're release 3, so we're still waiting. Assembly Bill 1340, which has to do with continuing medical education, mental and physical health care integration. This bill applies to the California Medical Board, but it was really of interest to us because the original language had, I believe the statute said, consideration of acupuncture for those who practice and may require knowledge in the field. Speaking of those medical doctors, physicians, and surgeons who practice it. Anyway, it was sort of encouraging people to take physicians to take a acupuncture course. The bill was actually amended and now deals with a more or less completely different topic. So it's not really of interest to us, but just as an FYI, the bill was sent to the governor and waiting. I'm sorry, it was signed into law on the 13th, so anyway. Senate Bill 27, dealing with professions, vocations, military service. This one is a dead bill. Senate Bill 572, healing arts licensees violations, giving licensees a 15-day grace period. That is dead for the year. And 762, a license activation fee, a waiver for anybody who is going to be providing voluntary unpaid service. That is also dead for the year. So I don't anticipate we will not have a legislative update, I don't think, for the next board meeting. But when we have our first board meeting in spring, we will most definitely be wanting to look at some bills and so forth. So that's it.
Thank you, Mark.
It's good to have the bills that pertain to our board, like listed like this. We have come a long way. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any comments from board? Good. No, good. It's a good report.
Any comments from the public? Okay. Let's move to the next item.
Okay, me again. Our okay, the next one, members, is the consideration of the May 26, 2017 meeting minutes. It's in our typical usual format. Happy to answer any questions or make any changes that you see.
Do any board members have changes to the minutes that they would like to address?
No.
Okay. Do
I make
have
the motion to approve the meeting minutes for August 4, 2017.
Second.
Would you do a roll call, please?
Public comment.
To vote?
Public comment.
All public comments.
Is there any public comment on the minutes? Seeing none.
Okay, Mark?
Okay, the motion is by Jeannie King to approve the May 26, 2017 meeting minutes as presented here today. The second is by Kitman Chan. The vote, Amy Matecki,
Yes.
Kitman Chan,
Yes.
Francisco Shea, absent, Jeannie King,
Yeah.
Ruben Osorio.
Yes.
4-0, motion passes. Okay, thank you, members. The next item number 12, is the approval of the draft meeting minutes for August 4th, 2017. You remember this was an enforcement enforcement meeting largely, so the minutes are extremely brief, but happy to entertain any changes or corrections.
Thank you. Board members, any changes?
No.
No?
I make the motion to approve the enforcement committee meeting August 4, 2017.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Who wants it, Teki or Chan? Who wants the second? You both said it. Okay, Chan.
Any comments from the public? No?
Oh, sorry, what was the motion? Can
To
you-
approve the agenda item number 12, meeting minutes for the August 4, 2017.
Okay, so I think there was a mistake in the first motion, it said an enforcement committee meeting. So
Correction.
you correct the motion and then redo the second, and then we'll
Okay.
take public comment again and then continue.
So say it again. Okay, so I make the motion to approve item agenda number 12, meeting minutes, August 4, 2017.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'm second.
Public comment?
Public comments? No? Okay, Mark?
Okay, the motion is by Jeannie King to approve the August 4th, 2017 board meeting minutes as presented here today. The second is by Kitman Chan. The vote, Matecki,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Shea, absent, Kang,
Yes.
Osorio.
Yes.
4-0, motion passes.
Thank you. So we're going to take a break, probably 10 minutes. Yeah. We will be back. So before we move to the next item, 13, and I just like to make announcement. I know we did in the August, a board meeting on the August 4th. We introduced a new board member, Ruben Osorio, has been the public member and would like to serve the board. So I just wanted to reintroduce for some of you not being there. And thank you, Ruben, for willing to help and serve the board.
Thank you, thank you. My name is Ruben Osorio. I am really honored to be here. I could not be happier to work with a bunch of professional people that are doing an excellent job, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm looking forward to serve the rest of the term that I have with the same group of people. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so fortunate. Thank you. Okay, so on behalf of the board, I would like to thank you all for participating in the stakeholders meeting in July 28, 2017. Your input is valued, and we appreciate the time you took to share with us your expert opinions. In addition, I want to thank the Solid Office for facilitating the meeting. So Mark, please introduce the number 13 item to the board.
Okay, thank you. As Dr. Matecki mentioned, we did have a public stakeholder meeting, which we had notified all of our licensees via our board website and also via our email list. We also extended invitations directly to other interested stakeholders like schools and associations. Our 2013 to 2017 strategic plan had contained a number of items about public outreach, and item 5.3 worked collaboratively with state and national professional associations to increase awareness of the board's functions. We had identified this as an important, all of our strategic plan items are important, but this was one that we really wanted to do, was really increase our outreach and listen to our professionals and our licensees and our stakeholders as much as possible. We did convene this on the 28th. The meeting was very well attended. We had over 20 people attend, and everybody contributed. I was furiously taking notes and trying to write information down, and everybody contributed, so it was a very collaborative meeting. And as Amy mentioned, our Solid unit, Department of Consumer Affairs Solid unit, which does things like, things like this, like stakeholder meetings and such, they facilitated the meeting. As they acted as our scribes, and as everybody was discussing ideas and discussing different things, they had captured all of that. And you'll notice that the next actual two sections in our item number 13, items 3 and 4 are the actual notes that Solid took, and I believe they did a really good job of capturing everybody's input, everybody's ideas and everything like that, so you can review that. We did post all of that information, including the PowerPoint and all of the notes that were taken, onto our website, so that's been available. That's been on there for several months. The primary goal of the meeting was to gain input on two ongoing issues, and I'll just kind of briefly mention the issue, and then some of the what is set out is just sort of a basic summary that staff felt was sort of captured the genesis of what the group was trying to say. But obviously the notes themselves and the letters really elaborate on that a lot better, and we're grateful to our stakeholders for submitting all of those too. So the first item was discussion of current number of clinical hours required as part of an approved acupuncture training program as set out in CCR section 1399.434, which is the standards for acupuncture training program, standards for acupuncture training program approval. So the first item, obviously, many of the stakeholders felt the clinical hour requirements should align with the current standards as set out in ACOM's master's level programs. A number of stakeholders felt that the board's current clinical hours was too prescriptive. There was a lot of discussion about physically present as set out in 1399.434. There were a number of comments that the regulation should be redefined to allow training programs more flexibility as to where the supervisor can be during that portion. Another issue was stakeholders had suggested that the current standards for clinical training as set out in ACOM's requirements of master's level program does allow sufficient supervision for those trainees. So again, it was aligning with that. And then finally, the stakeholders several stakeholders had mentioned that other states use ACOM standards as the sole criteria for clinical training, that those standards do not increase patient harm once graduates begin licensed practice. So that's kind of our first summary. Any questions, discussion from the board members?
I don't have a question. I've read through everybody's comments and their letters. Are we looking at the whole bulk of information right now, or going in sections, or what are we doing?
Well, again, this is what I'm just doing is summarizing what we had received in terms of the comments at the meeting itself, and then we also were encouraging interested parties to send us letters detailing their concerns, and we received, I think, 8 separate letters, and they're all replicated in the packet here. So this is just trying to summarize a lot of those comments, but for more specific detail for what some of the stakeholders had given to us, I just refer you to those letters.
Okay. Yep. I'll bring it up when we go over the sunset report. I just saw there was a correction, but I will do it when we get to the sunset report, actually.
Is it a correction correction to what?
There was a section on a letter that ACOM sent on the number of accredited programs that they currently accredit, and the number that we have in the sunset report was a variance. So we just have to we just have to edit that, but I'll bring it up in the sunset report section.
Okay. And then the second topic of discussion was the discussion of online education for acupuncture training programs. This is obviously an emerging issue for the industry. Stakeholders had commented on the need for clarification of the gray areas where online education may be applied to, an improved curriculum. A number of them had noted that as it becomes more common and mainstream for educational institutions, that there has been increasing demand in these types of delivery methods, online and such, from students, faculty, and acupuncture training programs. Again, the stakeholders had asked that our board consider aligning with ACOM standards regarding online coursework. So that's kind of the quick summary of what happened. Again, the notes from that Solid took are available on the website. They're in the packet, and then all of our letters are also available on the website, so everybody can see what everyone's thinking. So that's it.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, there's no one here from ACOM today, right? So that I can't ask the question. Okay. Oh, we can discuss it.
Any questions from the board members or comments?
The only comment I had, far as after reading through, and I'll address this to Ben because you probably can find out, in the letter that was sent from ACOM, I think it was one of the first letters, that goes over the what they have been approved by the U.S. Department of Education. They have they accredit 95 programs, 26 Master of Acupuncture, 57 of Master of Oriental Medicine, 12 postdoctorate. in 64 locations for 57 institutions located in 22 states and so forth. I have not gotten the latest update on if ACOM has the ability to accredit first professional doctorate program, because I know that was in the works, and I'm not sure if that has come forth, and ACOM member is not here, but I know that there's a school in California that did their first beta with first professional doctorate program, and I wasn't sure if that was included in the statistics or not. So that's something I wanted to address.
To my knowledge, the DACM program was not part of this stakeholder meeting. So anything regarding that program, I don't think it's listed in
If you talk
here.
about 12 postgraduate Doctor of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine program, but the first professional doctorate I think is in a category of their own right now, because there's only one school that I know about that has gone through their beta, so wasn't sure if that was part of this data that they gave us in this letter, so.
This letter is as of the end of July, so
Right.
I would leave it to them to.
Just wanted it noted in our notes for today. Thank you. My comment is that I'm just really glad that this stakeholder meeting happened. I think it's one of the first that really got all the stakeholders there without board presence. So they were free to talk amongst yourselves, although I read all your notes. So I think it was very healthy, and I'm glad the information is, in our notes, because I think it was important. I remember two years ago when the first discussion about direct supervision came up in our committee meeting. I remember it was Ron Zeidman that made the comment about the difficulty, and he explained it really well 2 years ago, and it really sunk in and made sure that got on the agenda. I remember the genesis of that, and I think it's good that we're talking about it today, because some of these statutes and regulations are very old, and I think it's important now we have come to a place where we've cleared a lot of the things that we needed to get done on the board, where this kind of discussion could happen, and so whatever that needs to be updated, I think is a good time for us to update it right now in 2017. So these discussions, I think, are very healthy for us. So I appreciate all of your attendance and all the comments that I've read. Thank you.
Now open to the public comments.
Yoon Kim, president of Empress College in Santa Monica. I want to really thank the board once again for holding the stakeholders meeting. It was really a positive experience. We felt very heard, and we appreciate the fact that our feedback is being taken very seriously. So we provided our comments, and the Accreditation Commission and the Council of Colleges have also submitted letters supporting a change in the regulation to encourage CAP to be in line with other boards and bureaus within the Department of Consumer Affairs, and to also be in line with the Commission standards. So I just had a question about what the next steps are, what the CAB envisions in terms of making these changes. How long would that take? What do you need additionally from the stakeholders in this process?
Well, we're still in the information gathering phase on these issues. So I think kind of our next steps is we need to continue to sort of look at everything. And, as always, just if you have additional data or studies to support your position, send it to us.
Yeah, I think, I read through the packet that's been posted. I worked on many of those letters with the organizations. The most compelling evidence really is the patient safety information provided to you by the American Acupuncture Council, which provides malpractice insurance for most of the acupuncture colleges in the U.S. They said in the letter that there's no difference in safety record between a California Acupuncture Board-approved institutions and non-CAB-approved institutions. So that really giving you compelling evidence that the CAB standards with the prescriptive language is not giving, is not resulting in a higher level of safety for our patient base. So just wanted to reiterate that and have you carefully look at that evidence. So, but it really would be helpful. 20 of the school reps made time in our busy schedules to come and to give our feedback. So we want to make sure that there's some action one way or another, and that this information isn't just being gathered and no action is taken on the part of the board. So it would really be helpful to outline what the board plans to do with this information that we've given you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we comment back or no? Is this a section we can comment back on?
Depends on what do you want to comment on?
Well, actually, I just want to comment. I see the last letter from the American Acupuncture Council, where they say 34 are approved by the Acupuncture Board and 26 are not, and review. There's no statistical supportive difference, but I would like to call upon the American Acupuncture Council. I know Marilyn Allen's not here today, but for them to give us a little bit more in-depth data on this. That letter to me, okay, a statement by Cameron, I know who Cameron is, but I would like to have more in-depth data on that conclusion. That's number one. Two is based upon, what I'm hearing, I myself, and I hope the rest of the board agrees, we have not come this far doing all this work, spending this kind of money on bringing in solid for us to not follow through on it. So, maybe previous board have not followed through on stuff that they did, but it's an unfair comment for you to say to us at this point, evidently showing the last 4 years of the work that we've done, we will follow through on it, and there will be action on it.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate that.
It's a slow process. I mean, some of the changes that you're talking about might require statutory change, which the legislature, that's their purview. Some of it might require regulatory change, which we do under authorized by statute, and that takes time too. So it is a process that does take time.
We do understand that. We just ask for clear communication about what the next steps are, so that we have reasonable expectations on when we can see some results. So if it's a year, 2 years, just let us know. We understand. We understand that the wheels of justice turn very slowly. We do understand that. But it would be good to have some communication on really the stages and what more you need from us. I do want to point to the letter from the Council of Colleges. There's more information from the American Acupuncture Council about how safe the school clinics are in general, and also in comparison to private practitioners. The schools across the board are doing an excellent job in providing very safe acupuncture treatments to our patient base. So that's coming from the insurance company. So that should be a very, very compelling evidence to the board that the schools are just doing an excellent job across the board. And these are both CAB schools and non-CAB schools. Thank you.
And to kind of speak to Board Member King's comments and something Mark said, it really is, public stakeholder meetings, information gathering, and if the board wants to take action on any of the information that's been gathered, which the board has reviewed, they can do that by putting it on the future agendas to look into taking action on any particular items they've been informed about.
And let's just to clear the air, we're coming into an era with the Acupuncture Board and stakeholders where we are having better communication, and we've been doing so in the last several years, which wasn't always the case. So I think it behooves us to keep an open mind of the information that the stakeholders are providing to us. That kind of communication hasn't happened in the past, and the communication that you are having with us that might have not happened in the past, that is now being open to do so. So let's be open to communication on both sides. I've been around long enough to be on the other side of the aisle as well, so I think we are all responsible to communicate with each other on the things that need to be corrected and improved in the profession. Thank you, Jeannie. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Seidman.
Ron Zeidman from Five Branches University. I want to thank the Acupuncture Board for organizing the meeting. It was professionally facilitated, and with 20 participant colleges, it went very smoothly. During the meeting, we did have suggestions, and we were told very clearly that that meeting, the purpose of that meeting was not to have motions or to have suggestions, that would be followed up by the board. And today we've heard that it will be followed up, but there are no motions to make any changes. There's no discussion about making changes. What we have heard clearly, we need to gather more information. So as a stakeholder, the investment that these 20 schools made, I don't think that was our expectation, that we would need more information. So I haven't been involved in politics. I don't know the procedure. I know it's going to take a while. It does. And at the same time, I think as stakeholders, we have to hear that there's an intent to make a change. We haven't heard that yet.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No comments? We're going to move to the next item, which is to review the draft of the sunset report.
Thank you, Dr. Matecki. Before you, if you're able to print out your copy, or if you can share the public document available or pull it up on your device, is the board's draft sunset report for the 2018 sunset hearing. This is the 2017 report for the 2018 hearing. And staff has been working on this diligently for the last several months. We began working on this in May and starting to collect all the information and going through several draft rewrites just to make sure that we are communicating clearly and effectively such that all our stakeholders, including the legislature and the committees, understand our performance. And so I think the best way to go forward with this is to take it page by page. Hopefully people have had a chance to review this to bring to our attention any issues in terms of content, factual basis, grammar, anything that would help us improve this report further. And we are very open to constructive criticism, so please bring your suggestions to the fore. So if we can start with page 1. Are there any comments or questions regarding any of the contents, members, for page 1?
Nope. I mean, this is basically what's been on like previous sunset reports. It's pretty replicated.
Indeed, the previous sunset reports do have acted as a model for the current one. However, we definitely have updated information. We are covering different years. To remind the board, we have been going through sunset review on a 2-year basis for the last several cycles, so at least the last 3 cycles.
Right.
So we perhaps are quite familiar with this
Right,
information.
Right. I think page 2, we've added in 2002, 1943, and 2014, SB 1246 has been added to the document that wasn't there in obviously previous years because it didn't exist. So
that is correct.
yeah, so those are new. The other ones are pretty standard, what we've read in the last 2 or 3 sunset reports. So I don't have much comment there.
Okay. On page 3, moving to page 4, we did add the research committee that was created a year ago under Tildy's presidency. Were there any questions on pages 2 or 3?
Nope.
Pages 4 or 5? Maybe take them 2 at a time.
Yeah. It was good to see all the regulatory changes that were, that was included, so that's good information for the Senate to have, so that's good.
Thank you. May I move to page 5 and
Yeah, that was
6 and 7?
5.
Okay.
The regulation changes that's happened.
6 and 7.
6 and 7 is pretty normal. Yeah, I mean, we briefly go over page 7, if the board is using a national exam, how is the board involved? And we write a short comment, then we expand on it in that, in the respective section, so that's fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
On page 6, under revision of disciplinary guidelines, just so we can maintain the same format, I would delete under the last sentence, the and of, so it's just spring of 2018.
Yeah, I think either it's a typo error or something. The beginning balance, not the ending balance. The first year is not the beginning balance. The next year, the 6 year you have is only the 1 year. The ending balance equal to the next year's beginning balance. I think you need to check. Okay.
Where are you?
Looking at what?
So it's on page 8.
Page 8,
We're on page
table
7.
2.
Page 2.
Okay.
Take away table 2. So in the first year, the ending balance at 2.127. The next column is that next year, the beginning balance is 2213. So if the first year's ending should be the beginning of the next year. The only one you got is that you got the year 2016 and 17, the ending is 4858. The next year is a 4858, the beginning. So I think you need to double check that last 3 years, and the ending should be equal to the beginning of the next year.
Oh, I see.
I will bring this to the budget analyst's attention. We'll sit together to confirm these numbers. There may be some variances based on accounting methods.
Okay.
But we do want to make sure we're presenting the appropriate data. Oh, for mine. And then going back to my comment earlier, I was on page 6 under revision for disciplinary guidelines. And I can put this to the board. Do you want to go through grammatical deletions and rewordings now? Is this okay to bring to your attention? Stop me if you don't want to see it. Otherwise, last sentence, starting with Office of Administrative Law, by, we're deleting the and of to maintain the standard throughout the entire document of just the season and the year. So it'll just be by spring 2018.
Got it. Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
On item 4, 5th sentence down, I would recommend, after extensive board discussion and public comment, the board recommended the utilization as opposed to approved utilization.
Got it.
On page 7, second bullet, if the board is using the national exam, we say, as noted above. I wanted to add more specificity, as noted in question 4. Third sentence, or third line from the bottom of that same bullet. The board has been regularly consulting with NCCOM since then regarding this recommendation. I recommend crossing out but has not been, to putting a period after recommendation, and the board seeks being involved in, the board is seeking to be involved in the development, scoring, analysis, ICOM, and it's at their discretion.
The board is seeking as opposed to has been.
Correct. They have their own exam development committee, so we don't know their processes. We're just continuing to work with them and get to know each other's processes, and since the movement towards recommending the utilization. On page 8, we'll take Kipman's notice into account. Page 9.
Good.
Page 10.
Yeah, I had a comment on it because this morning Mark saying the statute, we can increase the fee. It looks like you look at the current fees among the statute limit. So we are all in the statute limit. So if we want to raise the fee, we have to do the statute because we don't have the room. So if we need to take 2 years. So we have the the board needs to pay attention on it. You know, you look at it, at we all in the ceiling, except the school. But unfortunately, the school is no more for the board to approve. So we don't have a room to increase all the fees, except we change the statute. Okay, so we need 2 years. So the board need to pay attention on that.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
One item that might be challenging in terms of clarity on table 4, we go from current fee amount to statutory limit in the columns and then move to fiscal years. So there is a note at the top of that chart that says list revenue in dollars. Perhaps we can put a star next to the fiscal years for that to apply to, unless there's no confusion there. Because on one line, you know, the statutory limit, let's say for duplicate enroll fee is $10. Next line it says $1 when that's really $1,000 for the revenue for that year. Any changes to page 11? Moving on to page 12. If I hear no comment, I'll just go ahead and move on to the next page.
Yes, please.
On page 13, there is a typo under table 6. The second to last column, fiscal year 2015-16, under out of country, we show 2,223. We've confirmed the number should be 223. There was a mass exodus for some reason.
Then I had a comment on the table 7A, and the first year, the fiscal year 14 and 15, they exempt 1,200. And then look at the next 2 years, it dropped 50% down. Why is that?
Oh, that was a good question. We can go ahead and take a look to see if there was any massive discrepancies there.
I mean, how come it's dropped so many?
We'll get confirmation on that number. Thank you, Kevin. Any additional changes on page 13? Page 14 or 15? Page 16 or 17? $18 or $19? And 2021.
Okay, so this is the part that I was talking about. On the paragraph that starts with BPC 4927 requires all acupuncture training programs to be in the process of accreditation with ACOM. And we list ACOM accredits 62 institutions, and this is where when I read the ACOM letter in the stakeholders meeting, they accredit 95 institutions. So I think if that 95 number is correct based upon what they wrote us, I think that's just a number we just need to edit and correct.
It's 95 programs, not institutions.
Programs, not institutions.
Yes, including masters, postgraduate doctorates, and professional doctorates.
Does that include their massage programs too? I mean, we'll just check those numbers.
Yeah, check the numbers because they didn't match up when I checked. There were institution numbers and program numbers, but still didn't match up.
Well, and just be advised that ACOM does approve just plain acupuncture programs that wouldn't relate to California. So maybe there was some issue there, but we'll get those numbers
Get the numbers correct. I think that's good.
Thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything on page 21? And again, all of this data shows, outside of where we list our current board members, everything here shows up to June 30th of 2017.
Yeah.
So anything that's happened since then, we're not reporting on.
Yeah.
Pages 22 or 23.
I had a comment. Look at the table 9. The audit for the fiscal year 13 and 14, and the audit is only 600, and the 14 and 15 is close to 500. The failed license in 19% and 18%. If you use the population times this 19% and 18% for the licensee, we had more than thousands people fail. I don't understand why. That's a lot. Okay? We had close to 12,000 active license. Close to 20%, you're talking about more than 2,000 license fail of the CE credit. I mean, do the CE provider or the school can do something to reduce this failure to meet this CE credit? Because it's a lot, 18% and 19% times on the population, the more than 2,000 licensees fail on the CE credit. I don't understand why. They're too high.
That is a good point, Kipman. And part of our efforts with our outreach has been to really be able to stay in touch with or make contact with acupuncture professional associations so that we have a more direct way and more cost-effective way of working with our licensees. This is the licensee's responsibility to remain in compliance. And if you take a look at some of the failures in the CE audits, it's because they're not abiding by the regulations in 1399.480. And that is, again, incumbent upon the licensee to maintain. But hopefully with contact with additional professional associations, we can get more of this information out. You might see errors where they're not providing the right certificate because they're submitting NCCOM certificate, which the board does not accept. The board accepts only board-approved continuing education on a board-approved certificate style, which is clearly spelled out in the regulations as well. So oftentimes people do not get those or they do not provide enough. But it is alarming that we have, let's say, 20% failure rate.
And I think we also have to consider that these audits were not regularly performed in previous years. And I think it's only just been recent, Kipman, in the last 2 years that we've actually had enough staff to do an audit of 5% of the population. So just knowing that, I mean, this is data up until June of 2017. If you haven't done an audit in the last 10 years and you just start doing it, in the last 2 years, you're going to have skewed data. And I think we just have to take that for what it is.
No, I mean, if you're saying so, even we did not do the audit last 10 years, but these 2 audits in a row show that percent is very consistent. One is 19%, one is 18%. Then you look, even if we did not audit the last 10 years, but look at the percentage, okay? You times the population active licensee. We had close to, according to the table, close to 12,000, 18%, 20%, close more than the 2,000 licensee did not qualify to fail on the CE credit. And then whether we do the audit, then not, because it's the trend for 2 years, the percent is very consistent and tell us something is wrong. If the 2 years percent is different, then your theory is probably okay. But 2 years so close, almost identical, 19% and 18% is very consistent. And I think the audit reflects something. I think we have to pay attention on it.
Well, that's why we've been talking about it for the last couple of years, but I understand what your point is, and I think as a public member, I think that's a fair comment.
And just remember, it's compliance with providing their CE hours. So when it says fail, it's not like they're failing their classes or anything like that. They're failing with some issue of providing enough hours, or their hours weren't approved, or they were, inappropriate,
courses
submitted late, something along that line.
Yeah, submitting it
or
late is
fraud
usually-
on them,
yeah.
something along that
Oh,
line.
I mean, face the fact, it's 19%, 18% for 2 year consistent. That's a really high number. Whether the licensee delay, forgot, they failed. That's what they failed.
Right. Okay, so you understand that, right?
So one thing I just want to ask.
Please.
Is this audit, because earlier mentioned about online courses, so do we have like a separate, this is in-person or this is online audit?
Yes, and actually a number of the violations are because people they provided proof of taking more online education than they were allowed to, which is up to 50% of what you're required to submit for your licensing period. In most situations, unless it's your first licensing period, that would be 25 units. People would submit 26 with 24 live courses. That's a violation. You're only allowed 25. So people think they can get away with that one, or licensees, with that one, unit. But the regulation is clear. The board does not have wiggle room when it comes to evaluating your CEs. Either you're fully compliant or you're not.
I think these numbers will improve as we continue to do more regulated, audits and have more staff to do so.
Indeed. And as the item D attests, we have trained our CE coordinator, and she will be Bon Martini will be moving on to conducting the CE audits shortly.
Now we have a coordinator, so.
Now we have a coordinator, exactly.
We didn't have a coordinator because somebody moved up in the steps. So, it's all good. Let's move on.
Thank you. Any additional comments on those pages? 22 and 23?
Just want to make a clarification for Mr. Kidman.
We should do it.
You want to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Public comments,
Yeah,
please.
quick
Yes.
clarification, because you brought, Jacques Marco, Empress College, you brought up an interesting point, and, the CU coordination has really been stretched, but they have been able to maintain. However, I think from my observation, a lot of those problems could also be newly licensees that are gotten licensed, started to do their licenses, but then eventually moved out of state, and they just let the whole process go. So this is like a constant problem where people decide, okay, I'm going to move out. I'm not going to notify the board. They might not even have a change of address or have that out-of-state notification. Next thing you know, they just let it go, and they're in violation. So that's and there's quite a few practitioners that are moving out and going out of state. So that might be also be part of that percentage. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So 24, 25, moving from education to enforcement. 26, 27. And you'll note some of these tables, they kind of just move on to the next page. We will try to format this for the final version as conveniently as possible and aesthetically as possible for the final product. 28, 29, 30, 31. In reading question 36 on page 30, towards the bottom of the page, the board is highlighting that it does use the DCA's complaint prioritization guidelines for healthcare agencies, and we do list the labels that the DCA and the Division of Investigation use. Do you feel it may be helpful to actually explain each of those out? For example, what does routine or high priority mean? Okay, so we'll add definitions there.
Yeah, thank you. Because I noticed that we just have a lot more appendices and attachments with this report, and so the more explicit we are in how to read it, I think would be
beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Anything on 31? 32, 33. Or 35? Perhaps a suggestion on question 48. Do you feel that we should go ahead and bullet out the 3 points we have for why some costs are uncollectible? Perhaps it'll read a little easier.
Yeah. Yeah. The first, second, and third.
Yeah.
Yeah, put it as bullet points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just however it needs to be done for it to be just visually easier to read,
Mhm.
and just let it stand out, I think would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
I did all this in the computer, so like I'm looking at the sheets for the first time, so all my edits are in the computer.
Right.
I'm like, where's my edits? Okay.
Christine, on table 11, can you confirm, do we need to keep the highlight there or can we remove that? Okay. Remove the highlight.
And also page 37, like I'm just being nitty gritty now. Number 26, like just aesthetically, if we can move that parentheses down, so parentheses i.e. education, clean, blah blah blah. It's more on one line.
Sure.
You know, just for aesthetics reasons. Yeah, I think that looks better if it's.
Certainly. Were there any other questions on anything from 34, 35, or 36, 37?
I don't know how many of you guys put your heads together to write these reports, but I have to say it's well written and a lot of good information, so thank you guys.
Thank you.
Seriously, like some good information, a lot of good explanations and detailed oriented. I think these questions are much more detailed oriented to numbers and specifics where it wasn't like that a few years ago. So I think we're making improvements,
Thank you.
right? Yeah. So it's good. It was good to see that.
We like the facts.
Yeah, exactly. Like more
Even if they
detailed
don't always
facts.
make us look good, at least we're saying what we do. And so the facts may not always make us look good. For example, the continuing audits, continuing education,
No,
but
but it's information that they want, and
Exactly.
the fact that we're getting to the place where all the other stuff got to take care of the previous sunset reports, and now they're actually asking the questions that can help really improve the board's regulatory ways. So I was very pleased the questions that they were asking. You know, they're different than the sunset review years ago. So I was very pleased with that level of improvement.
thank you.
So thank you for all of you that put it all together. I know you guys were, as I was just checking in, I know like several of you guys were all putting your heads together to like come up with all this
Our staff did.
data.
All
Yep.
of it.
I know,
It was the whole
I know.
office.
And that's improved too, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Certainly. Pages 38 or 39?
Sorry, can we go back to their 87?
Yeah.
The first,
56 or just before that?
55, page, or excuse me, number 55.
Mhm.
The second line says the board posts all PC 23 orders. Should we spell out what a PC 23 order is? It's a condition of bail, kind of spell that out.
I think that would be
I
informative.
think that's good. Yeah, definitely informative. Spell it out.
Thank you, Christine. $38 or $39? That's good. Okay. 40, 41?
I know this is, I'm not sure if this is possible, but because it's like a page thing,
Hmm.
then like for example, page 39, like the number 62, 63 is very close to the binder thing, you know?
Mhm,
Is it possible to move it over a little bit, just visually?
Oh, definitely. When we go to the department's production unit, we'll have it be a lot more aesthetically
Let's
pleasing.
make it a little bit, more uniform and more centered.
Certainly.
Was it the page number you're referencing?
I'm just, the whole page just needs to move to the right a little bit.
More space or the punch?
Yeah, the punch took up the space.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm assuming the report is gonna be on a binder like this, and you guys are gonna make like 60 of them or something.
It'll be bound, yeah. It won't be with the combs though. Last time we had it with a nice back,
good.
a nice spine, so.
They're centered more, it's just visually aesthetic.
Now, on pages 40, starting with pages 40 and 41, we are moving to section 10, and the board here is addressing the committee's previous background papers. So there are some things, for example, when you see issue number 1, staff recommendation, that is what the committee has presented to the board to address. And then what you see is how the board responded after the 2016 sunset response. So again, we can't change that either because this is what was submitted. It was already in print. What we can affect is where you see the board's 2017 sunset review update. Okay. So then we can move to 43. Okay. Any changes there?
There.
There. The next 2017 update starts on page 47 for issue number 2. It's there. And that continues to page 49.
Numbers are good. Good numbers. Good there.
Hearing no
For
objection.
page 49,
Yes.
number 7, that's a lot of space between number 7 period and then A, so we need to, are they like that in all of them? Okay.
Yeah,
It's
they
tabbed.
were indented there
Okay, got
a
it.
bit for clarity.
Okay, got it. Alright.
All right. Issue 3, the 2017 update takes place on page 51.
Right, okay.
On page 52,
Mhm.
item 5.3.1, identify acupuncture and Asian medicine state and national professional association. Do you feel it would help the board to communicate our current list of approved associations so they can see that we have updated that?
Sure.
We can add that as an attachment.
Now, when we write out acupuncture in this sense, is that acupuncture lowercase or uppercase?
On item 3.1.
When we're using acupuncture / Asian medicine, shouldn't acupuncture be uppercase?
We can definitely capitalize that.
Yeah.
Where exactly are we?
Page 52, item number 5.3.1, identify acupuncture.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I think that needs to be capitalized.
We'll confirm that.
Confirm that, yeah. I know there's rules around that too. And just page 53, we just move that over, move the margin over. And that's the page where the question that Dr. Clark asked regarding the cost of administrating Kale is on page 53 in issue number 5.
Indeed.
So that is where that is. But I remember I saw that.
That's right. Perhaps what might show a bit more clarity is if we list the board's cost for the administering and development of the exam for the last 4 fiscal years, or at least starting from the date they list, 13-14
Sure.
fiscal year.
Yeah.
The board
I
members
think
in
that's
agreement.
good information.
Okay.
So, just to kind of resolve as many issues we can here, for Board Member King's question about whether acupuncture needs to be capitalized, if you envisioned Asian not there and it's just said acupuncture, medicine, state, national professional association, we're not referencing any specific association or title of an association, so I wouldn't think that that would need to be capitalized.
Okay. Also here is that's a background. Did you want to have, I thought we're not going to change the background.
Correct. We won't be adding, thank you, Saul, for that comment. Moving back to the previous comment, the cost for the exam development and administration wouldn't be changing the first part. It would be added as part of our 2017 update.
Yeah.
Since they did discuss the costs, and I see it was not discussed before.
So for my notes, to make sure I've gotten it correctly, on page 53, what is it that are we contemplating adding?
We will be adding the cost for developing and administering the exam for each fiscal year starting in 2013-14.
And that would be added to the body here?
No, that would be added to our response on page, the 2017 update on page 56.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
So
that's
item
good.
5 does take up, starting on page 56. And I found a misquote on the second paragraph, the fifth line down. A California supplement comment to be implemented too earlier. The direct quote is no earlier. I would recommend that change. And then for that last paragraph, the last two sentences there, perhaps we can add a bit more specificity of where there is no coverage of the California-specific scope of practice issues or education or practice of law and regulations. So we can go through and list the audit's comments saying that these specific areas are not covered, as opposed to, I think, from initial feedback.
That was the paragraph I commented on, Ben, right?
Correct,
Because I was a little
yes.
confused on the writing of it. So yeah, if that section could be clarified and more detailed, I think that would be
Sure.
that'd be good. Yeah, just to list it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and add that.
Fine.
And my question is that something that needs to be worked on, or do we already have a draft of the language that we can clarify now?
Well, it'd be in language taken from the audit itself, but we don't have it available right here.
Okay.
We need to then approve that separately.
Well, I guess the reason I ask is that if there are substantive changes that need to be made to this draft report, ultimately when the board considers the draft report, I would recommend that it be held to the next board meeting until those substantive changes can be made so that the board members can see them.
Okay. Any other changes or additions to section 5, issue 5?
No, I think that I'm just, I was very impressed with this section, you guys. It's very frank, very, yeah, it was good. Good, thank you.
I just want to remind the board that this is your report.
This is why I'm saying. This is why I'm saying.
Christine, you had a comment?
Yeah, actually going back to page 48,
Yeah.
sorry.
Time travel.
And I bring it up because
Time
it is,
travel.
I think, would be a substantive change.
Please.
So item 3, it states corrections have been made to the percent of cases that were closed with discipline for fiscal years 13-14, 14-15, as reported above. And that was in reference to page 46, the paragraph starting with, for example. It says represents less than 1% of all cases. That was actually miscalculated, and then there's another one that says less than 1%. And so the right calculation was fixed, I guess, in the 2016 response, but we need to probably note it in the 2017 update.
I agree.
Thank you for catching that, Christine.
Okay, we left off on page 58, Board's 2017 update. There's a short paragraph there. And staff is definitely handling the workload. Thank you, Jay. All right, moving on. The board's 2017 response to issue number 7 is on page 60.
Obviously, this is a very important section for us. No doubt. So,
Indeed.
yeah, good. I think this section is really good because we've done so much work with the regulations, enforcement, education, licensing, and I think we've pretty much met as much as we could in the time we've given to the strategic plan. So I think it's in alignment with what they want to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the responses were good. Yeah.
Board staff recognizes there's more work to do, but
Yeah,
we have come a way.
it's a journey.
It's a journey. Exactly. All right. For section 11, I want to preface this with acknowledging that this was all the issues you see in part 1, 2, and 3 is staff working together to identify these issues. So these are not items that the board necessarily has voted on for policy. So we want to treat these very carefully. We do not want to put out anything that is not board policy, although some of these items have been discussed, for example, the uniform standards. So we have, at least for section 1, that is appropriate. New issues identified by the board is where we'll see staff's issues.
Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that, that was mandated to all the boards, so I think it's fine.
So for example, if we look at the first bullet for item 2, staff is recommending that we seek authority to issue citations higher than $5,000 on some items. Right? The board has not taken a position on that. So we would need that before we can go forward with this recommendation. Now, being that there's some substantive changes, we can take a look at these and bring these to the November board meeting as separate items for the board to approve, and then we can go ahead and include them in the final report since there wouldn't be a substantive change outside of what's already included in the materials.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. I think because section 11 shows positions that the board hasn't taken, perhaps at the next agenda, agendizing them out for discussion, and then the board can maybe make motions and adopt the positions, and then that way it can be kept in the report.
Sure, especially when it's regulations related, like the first number 1, right?
Number 1 is more of an update.
Yeah. Because
Mark,
that was a
can
package
you confirm that that's not a
Number one
position?
is just identifying that the uniform standards that explains
Yeah.
sort of what has been happening in the last 2 years since the last sunset, and it's just reporting it. It's an issue that's already been identified. We're just again commenting and reporting what the issue is and what we're doing on it. So
I think that it's important for them to
it's essentially an update.
know that. Yeah, I understand.
So to confirm, that wouldn't require the vote.
Just the general background information, yeah.
Board members are welcome to even say if they want these items on the next agenda, but otherwise we'll go ahead and recreate. We'll list all of them as items.
Sure. And Ben, so item number 47, remember when we discussed it on the phone, like what did that number match up to what was addressed? You thought that you had to go check back that number 47?
Let me go back to number 47.
Yeah, we did it on the computer, so I wasn't sure if that.
And again, Jeannie was part of the ad hoc committee, so that's why we were having these discussions. It was not ex parte.
Thank you, Jeannie. You are welcome. Dedicated a whole weekend. As long as the number correlates to the topic as you discussed, then I'm good. Just want to make sure that,
Oh, right, okay, so we'll need to confirm that,
yeah, you weren't sure if the number.
it looked like 47, we said 47 on page 62, but it may actually be a
Doesn't
different
match up, just
question.
47 on page
The site
34,
plan.
47 is about cost recovery.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that's, yeah, I remember that was one of the things we needed to go. It doesn't match.
We could just take as discussed in question 47 out and leave the issue as is.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because they're gonna be going back and forth on the numbers we give them, we just wanna make sure we direct them to the correct number.
Certainly. There'll be a lot of flipping
That
around.
would not be good. Alright, so good, we got, alright.
Okay, that takes us
Yeah.
to section 12. These are the additional attachments. And you'll note that the next agenda item is the board's administrative manual, which we wanted to update because it has not been updated since 2015, I believe. So we've added it as a separate item that, with the board's direction, we will include in section 12. But we can go ahead and switch to that right now. We can do that?
Up to Board Member Matecki, President Matecki.
Can we go ahead? Okay.
Yes, please.
So if you will please turn to item 15. It is the last item of your packet. This is the new administrative manual. What we've done is we have strike-throughs and underlines. Strike-throughs represent removals, underlines represent additions, just as in regulatory language. You will not see double strike-throughs and double underlines. I do apologize. Sometimes you'll see a different color. That's because there's a number of us going through this, and so we're working with words track changes. It's quite useful. So you'll note on page 1, the cover page, we're showing today's date, should the board care to approve it today. We're also adding Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, above the governor's name. And I suggest we also take this page by page. If members have an issue with an item on that page, let me know at that time. And then we can visit it back again at the end. On page 2, we show our new board members, remove our previous board members, and have our current positions, officer titles. Updated the executive officer, and a bit of the language as to the purpose of this manual. Any issues so far?
Good, it's fine.
Okay. On page 3, we've just removed some of the spaces added for formatting. Same for page 4. On page 5, we've updated the language so it's clearer and streamlined. We removed that first sentence because we don't have the historical data to understand, and we're looking for it, but we just didn't feel we could stand by it in terms of research done at a medical school and then under the auspices of sponsored by a medical school. We feel that that paragraph works a lot better without even having to discuss that. Should the board be in favor?
Yes, good.
All right. We've also added the more recent history again as well, 2002, 2006, and 2014. In page 7, we made sure to add "and the legislature."
I know you can get lost in those acronyms.
Indeed.
Our profession has so many acronyms, we need to reduce them.
And
This
then
is
you,
just the state of California.
This
That's
is
what I'm
just-
saying, it doesn't even go for the country. We need a dictionary.
Yes.
Just for
Nothing on page 8 other than the heading, the header, removing procedure as on all pages. Page 9, just some spacing issues. Page 10, I'm suggesting a change to the timing of submitting items for future, to be held for the next board meeting. presenting an item 2 weeks before a board meeting is near impossible unless we're looking at holding an emergency board meeting. Because the agenda has to be posted at least 10 days before a board meeting. So I'm asking the board if they're all right with future agenda items be presented up to 2 weeks after a board meeting for the next board meeting, so that we can go ahead and start that process and not have to rush to prepare materials for something so close to the end of it, so close to a board meeting.
So 2 weeks after the board meeting, they have to put in the new agenda items?
Certainly, you would communicate.
Yeah, I get it, yeah. I think that's a good idea because some of the complaints that I get, like people calling me or emailing me, is like, we want to put it on the agenda, we only have 10 days, and then they never hear from you guys. So that this would prevent that.
I
You guys
agree.
can do it right when it's fresh in your minds, 2 weeks after a board meeting, get it in there. So good,
Thank you.
that would
On
make
page
sense.
11, we've crossed out audio since we now have both audio and video, and it's just recorded materials, as well as some spacing at the top of the page. On page 12, just some clarity with the language. And it's using the same words, it's just a matter of spacing and punctuation. So there isn't any content change. Page 13, again, is just the header. 14, same thing, spacing issues. 15, just the header, as well as 16 and 17. On 17, we also have some spacing issues. Header on 18. Capitalized board member on page 19. We're almost done. Just the header on 20 and just the header on 21. 22 we have the header, and then on the bottom of 22 what we've done is these were separate sections. We've just gone ahead and included all the required training in one section, so it's clear any mention to the source government code is listed as well. So you'll see we crossed out sexual harassment training and then updated with it in the whole section.
It is good, that's good, more clear. Good.
So that is the administrative manual. If you're okay with that, what we'll do is we'll just go back to the sunset report now, and then we'll take it, the approval of item 15 up as a separate agenda item.
Separate?
Yeah, for the next item. We'll go back now to section 12 so that we can review the remaining attachments, see if any issues are found there.
Section 12.
Section 12.
Page
Draft.
63, where it talks about the attachments. That's where it starts.
In the sunset report?
Yes.
Correct. So page 63 is where it says attachments. Actually, if I can, why don't we move, since the next item in the packet is the appendices. These are items that were in the report itself that we referred readers to the appendices. These were tables requested specifically by the legislature.
Got it.
So the first item you'll see is Appendix A, and it is all participating board members' attendance for the last 2 years. And they're listed alphabetically. I definitely recommend you check your attendance and confirm everything's good.
Check mine, I'm like, it should be a Y all the way through.
There will be grades at the end.
What?
Participation is 10% of your grade.
100%.
Well, we got so many meetings, huh?
Yes. And this does include the question asked for both board and committee meetings, so we are showing both.
We did pretty good.
Meetings. The next appendix, item appendix B, is the legislation board. Oh, excuse me, is the legislation the board has been tracking, followed by the regulations the board has been working on.
What about cleaning up this formatting so it looks like the rest of the appendices? It seems to stand out as a different format.
Certainly, which one are you
Appendix
referring
B?
to specifically?
Huh?
You're talking about
Well, like the other
appendix
ones,
B?
the appendix has a block and blue lettering in it.
Standardized tables.
And then this one starts with California Acupuncture 2018. The other ones don't do that. So it could just be cleaned up.
Okay, you guys work on that.
Yes, ma'am. The tables.
Yeah.
Appendix C is the list of regulations. Past and future. And on the back page of that is what we have adopted. Next item is Appendix D. It's listed, it currently states Attachment D, but it should say Appendix D. I've noted that for correction.
Okay.
These are our enforcement performance measures. On the next page are the Acupuncture Board Consumer Satisfaction Survey results. And you'll note that we received none in this year. Perhaps no news is good news here.
We should put attachment E, it's attachment E, correct?
Yes.
So we should just, on the top of the table, list attachment E for those.
Yeah.
It's not included.
Just uniform the.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, the headers.
Ben, actually, can we go back to the
Enforcement?
the enforcement performance measures? I just wanted to note that in previous sunset review reports, we've had the actual reports that DCA puts up on their website for our performance measures, which has it's like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 pages long, and it has like a little a table of how we're doing visually, like where the target is and where we are. So instead of including those in a behind volume, I put it in a chart like this. So I didn't know if you wanted to include the actual reports from DCA, from the department, or do you like it like this where it's in a table and it's more concise and you just see the numbers and not the actual visual tables?
Well, the actual questioner asks for the DCAs or just the board to report on its performance? That would be the guiding question.
Could we do both?
Or we can include both. One of our summary and then the actual,
Reports,
I think that works. Board members
It's
okay
gonna
with
make
that?
it a lot longer, but yeah, no, that's fine.
I just think sometimes the visual,
Yeah.
it's good, right?
On the survey report, can you make the colors lighter on the heading? Nobody look at it, understand it.
Sure.
Too dark.
You're talking about the purple
Yeah.
mauve
No,
cells?
The letter.
Ah.
Okay, nobody read it, I mean, it's confused.
We'll see, this is what we were presented, so we'll try to see if we can change it up. The consumer satisfaction survey results, we can? Okay, so we'll change that to a lighter background with a dark text. Certainly.
People in the aisle, they had to wear the glasses, don't understand it's too small and too dark.
Yes. There is a typo on the complaint number, you look below, but this is the complaint we received, so that's the language that was used in that complaint. So we don't want to change that.
One idea is to maybe add a footnote or with the correct, yeah, exactly. To kind of note the mistake, yeah. So that if anyone's using it as a reference. But of course,
I think
it's just a
it's good,
suggestion.
Yeah, yes, but no, it's good.
Okay, we moving forward to the customer service satisfaction survey results. And again, we only received 2 surveys, so we don't have a very good sample size. What we have is excellent and unacceptable, so
6 people responded.
yes.
I don't think this is a sounds
Balanced
good.
out.
Yeah, I think it's only 6, based on 6 people respond.
For the consumer satisfaction, if you go to the customer service satisfaction, it's 2 people responding. So Christine, could you explain
Getting involved.
the difference between the 2 surveys for the board members?
Sure, the consumer consumer satisfaction survey, that is a survey that's done that we send out with our closure letters when we close a complaint. So that's coming from the actual consumer who filed the complaint. And then the customer service satisfaction survey, that's just something we have on our website for anybody who uses or calls into the acupuncture board or uses our services. They can complete that survey on our website.
So that's open to everyone, all of our stakeholders.
Customer is that, you know, you base it on 6, I think the name had to change. Should not be a customer, you know, you're talking about, you know, customers.
Even one is a customer.
Talk about 6.
Yeah, it's only even if one is still a customer.
True.
I mean, it's that standard. So we can't come up with.
You know, some kind of notation saying this because it looks like, you know, you take 6 cases or then 6 respond to fill up all the percentage. The percentage obvious is not important enough. To provide the 6 people, provide a percentage for the satisfaction for the customer.
These are the names assigned by the department
There's
to
some
these
kind of
surveys.
notation to tell this kind of stuff.
This is by the department.
The department has labeled these surveys, yeah.
It's nothing we can change. Yeah.
And the low sample size shows the quality of the survey.
Yeah.
It's apparent right away. It's like not enough people, or there's not many complaints.
And the Senate knows how to read that. Yeah, so I'm not worried about that. I mean, even with the colors, that's the DCA requirement, so I don't know.
Yeah, even those colors. We can change that?
Okay,
Our expert will get right on it.
let's go.
All right. Then again, no customer service satisfaction survey results for 2016-17. Attachment F refers to the BMP committee's question on what training have we afforded our staff. And during my time as executive officer, I have highly encouraged training and conducted a number of all staff trainings, especially part of our focus for customer service, and as well as promoting the advancement of my staff members such that they can get analytical training as well as introduction to leadership positions. I'm very interested in supporting my staff's careers. By improving my staff, we improve our board. Hopefully they'll stay with us.
Give them a pickle. We got
Give
10.
them a pickle, that's right.
Love it.
We say that in the office all the
Anything else you
time.
want to give besides a
It's a
pickle?
good thing. It's a good thing.
I love that. That's in the Sunset Report. Give them a
That's a
pickle.
pickle. We are on record now.
There is some humor in us.
There is.
Still left in
We
us.
can maybe arrange the board member training and give them a pickle solid training.
Exactly.
Members
yeah.
are welcome to attend. We'll let you know.
Our
when we
new
do.
logo. Acupuncture board. Give them a pickle.
Moving forward, this also the training shows for Leadership Academy. That was my training as soon as I was promoted to acting. So those are those courses there. For the next item, Table 8, this is because this table was having issues fitting in the full document with the headers, but once we go to full production or final production, we'll work with the production staff to make sure it fits appropriately. But this is our examination data, and that refers to question 30.
Somewhere on the top header, Ben, is it possible for us to note it relates to that question so the reader could better identify the question this relates to?
Certainly.
Okay, good. Because it's important data, but it's good for them to see what question this relates to. Okay. I know we have a lot like appendix,
Mhm.
attachment. So something like that, would this can be in the body? Or it's better to leave it in the attachment.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Mhm.
I would just say we have a lot of appendix attachments, like this one looks like a one page.
Mhm.
Could this just go to the, with that question, so would be right there in the main body.
Mhm.
And it's easier instead of later on have to refer back and forth.
I think you bring up a good point of aesthetics versus utility. So we would want to consider our reader in the situation, if we want them flipping back and forth, or if we want it in the document. I recommend at the very least, the attendance be kept in the back. That's a lot of charts to have in the main report, but we can definitely look at including at least table 8.
I think
and the
table 8
training.
is one of those that can be included. The other ones, I think, is good where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's enough graph in the body that really shows what's going on, and then there's additional attachments. So, because in that section with exams, there's 3 pages of statistics.
Mhm.
This is just the 4th.
Right.
Yeah. So.
To make sure we're all on the same page, the other charts that we've been looking at in the appendices would stay in the back, but table 8 would be included in the body of the report. Is that what?
That's better flowing it for the reader, because like I said, that section already has 3 different pages of those statistics in the body.
Mhm.
The 4th one just includes all of that. So if that makes more sense to put it as the 4th graph in the body, that's okay, but I think those 3 pages already in the body is sufficient for them to get an idea.
Yeah, and I think, whatever the board wants to do with regards to placement of the charts is acceptable. I just want to make sure that
We place it right.
that staff is aware of what the board wants, so that when we come back next time, it is correct.
Is it confusing if one of the graph is in the body and then the rest is, in the back? Is that confusing for the reader? Or, I'm good either way, because I think enough of the body has that statistics,
Mhm.
the exam statistics. There's 3 pages of it already.
Well, we could definitely move table 8 over
To the-
back into the report.
Yeah.
Or I should say, we will definitely work on doing that. The challenge, and we spend a bit of time, I should say, I spent a bit of time trying to fit this table into with the headers and whatnot, but we'll give it another crack.
Yeah.
And
I think we should be time sufficient on that. So if you already tried and it didn't work and it's better in the back, we don't want to spend too much extra time, because I think the information in the body is sufficient. So if it's too much to go back to redesign the whole packet, I think that's really a staff's call.
So it's either way, the board members, okay.
okay, what we'll do is we'll work really hard to make it fit. If it doesn't,
Just flowing,
We'll
the
apologize at
flowing
the next
of
meeting.
reader, I think, make sure it's easier for the reader to read.
certainly. That concludes the appendices. Now we turn to the attachments, and these are the items that were requested in section 12 of the Sunset Report, which includes the board's administrative manual, the current organizational charts showing the relationship of committees to the board and membership of each committee, as well as any major studies done by the board. So the board administrative manual we have reviewed, and we will approve on the next agenda item. The next item in this report for attachment is the current org chart. And you'll see 2015-16. And then you'll see the next one is attachment B, and we'll label the first one attachment B1 and the second one attachment B2, because attachment A is the administrative manual.
So the second page, Ben, that's the fiscal year 2000, it says 2016-14?
Correct, that is a typo.
Huh.
The correct number should be 2016-17.
Okay, got it, okay, because I thought, okay.
Thank you. And then, so those were the org charts for the committees themselves. The final item in the attachments is the audit that the board contracted with OPES to conduct on the NCC AOM. And so what we have provided here is the executive summary, as well as an additional page where we have a link to the full report.
So, if that's possible, add the conclusions also. Oh. So I'm just ask, could we also add the conclusions or, right?
We can definitely list the conclusion that's presented in the audit. Would the board welcome that addition? Okay.
Was that a yes? Was that a yes?
Yeah, was that, can I get a yay from everybody?
Yes,
Yes. Kevin?
It wasn't a long conclusion. I think it had like 5 or 6 bullet points, and it should be fine to fit in there.
Okay.
Add the conclusion? Yes.
Yes,
It
okay.
is yes.
We'll add the conclusion. Anything else on that section? I recommend that we also add the breakdown of the costs, or we would do it in the background, responding to issue 5, I believe we talked about that.
Breakdown. I can.
The administrative costs for our exam.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Seeing no more comments. Next we have the office org charts, starting with fiscal year 2013-14, going into 17-18. Any questions there?
Nope.
Okay, we have reached the end. Yes.
Can you add a footnote on the bottom to understand what this means? AGPA, SSA, and this kind of stuff. I look at it, I don't understand what this means, AGPA.
Yes, we've gotten back to state speak now, and we can definitely create.
Some kind of notation on the bottom.
They understand.
But yeah, the guy with it don't understand on it.
Right. We can definitely add, would you like us to add it here to the chart or into the administrative manual is it there? Sounds like you want it in the chart. A little legend.
What would be better for the reader? I mean, I'm assuming the reader knows these acronyms better than us. Is that correct or no?
And they sometimes
Well,
with the tables.
so this is the board's report, and it's envision yourself as testifying before the legislature, and the legislature would be reading the report. The legislature may not necessarily be familiar with these terms of art regarding the titles of persons who are part of the enforcement team, which I think this is what this is. So I think a legend sounded like a good idea. Were these terms, I think it might help to know, were these terms defined within the body of the report and abbreviated in the body of the report, or is this kind of the
No.
first time these abbreviations are appearing?
These are the first time they're being used.
So
yeah, so I think it.
Yeah, right after that NCCOM like gov page, the web page, then a legend of
Perfect.
those acronyms. So then when the legislature reading it, they'll see the acronyms and have an explanation of what that is.
Good.
I mean, we're used to it. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I think that's good. A legend would be good.
Perfect. We can do that. Any other additions, edits?
So, with the, just want to get back to, could we add the exam, the test, cost for the exam, breakdown also, could we put it in?
For the Kale or?
Kill both. Could
Both.
we, yeah, kill and for the OPES report there.
Okay, so.
Breakdown cost for administer the kill exam,
Mhm.
but also there is a cost for both exams, also for the,
To sign up for the test. Yes,
yeah.
okay,
So things are clear.
okay. So I'm hearing to add a breakdown of the costs for the board compared to the NCCAOM, is that correct?
Yes.
Are board members in agreement with that?
Long as it's relevant to the question that they're asking,
Mhm.
that's good information, I think, it's necessary, but if it's relevant to the question that they're asking, then I think it's good.
Well, this would be, Dr. Matecki has recommended that it be added to our appendices where we're discussing our audit of the national exam, so it
Oh,
would
I
fit
see.
there.
Okay,
If the board members are willing to
I
support
see,
that.
okay. Okay, that would,
Good.
I think that could be relevant, yeah.
Agree, Kim?
Okay, we'll go ahead and add that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we have covered all the items in the draft report. Where we are now is, we do not need a motion to approve since we have some substantive changes. We just need direction from the board to go ahead and make these changes and then bring it back to the next meeting.
So what I might recommend is, as Ben said, there doesn't need to be a motion just to instruct staff to go back and make the changes that were discussed today. So I would recommend that staff be instructed to make the changes that were discussed today, as well as any non-substantive technical changes. So that allows them to go ahead and make those, and we don't have to discuss things like commas and spacings when we come here.
Do I have a motion?
You don't have to motion,
Want your
just
motion?
tell us to
But
do it.
once that is
Okay.
done, what I would like to know is once the corrections have been made, what's the process after that, Salwa?
So what we still have the agenda item to talk about what we're gonna talk about next meeting. So we would just add this back on the agenda next meeting.
November meeting.
Yeah, and by that time, we would have, I think, progressed and had the changes made, so we can put on that agenda, once we get their agenda item, something like, review and approve the draft report.
Okay, so long as, okay, that's fine, because we're having the November to make sure that this gets approved for,
For the December 1st due
Correct,
date.
okay.
And it does have to go to the production team. We are cutting it close with the November 17th date.
my question is, do you need it before that, or is November 17th okay? If you need it.
Well, we
before-
are stressing the department's production. There are 6 other boards that are going through sunset review right now. So, however, November 17th is 3 weeks away. So it doesn't give us much more time to agendize something sooner than November 17th. But that is the week before Thanksgiving break, and we have to take that into account with the production team. I will call the production unit and talk to them about our situation and see if we can get an accurate estimate on its production.
So maybe to clarify or elaborate, though you could, on the agenda, we have it here, agenda item 14, review of the draft sunset report. And it doesn't say adopt for today on the item, but within our informational notes, it says that action may be taken on any item. So you could take action on this item today and adopt it, but because we've, it doesn't technically say action on item 14, and because there are substantive changes that we've talked about or that the board has requested today, I would recommend that we, and I think Ben seemed to indicate, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems doable that we can have it ready by the next meeting and still have it in time.
In the past, have we not still made a motion even though there have been substantive changes to the document? Have we done it in the past where we give a motion for the executive director and the staff to make substantive changes and get back to us on a certain, I think it's been done before.
You're
If
correct.
you-
Yeah,
if
you're
That
correct.
speeds up the process on your end to get that done sooner. That motion has been done before.
I think if the changes were spelled out very clearly and, all of the edits were specifically known and the staff was instructed to make very specific edits, that would be doable. You would say, well, we just, are going to make a motion to adopt all the edits talked about today, and we're going to adopt the item as is, as discussed. But I think that some of the changes that were discussed today were more like, how about, we clarify this paragraph, or, and it was just more general. And then I think there were also some points where the board wanted clarification. Is this number correct? What was the percentage here and there? So it sounded like the board wanted clarification on some items, as well as kind of left open how added language would be, as opposed to indicating specifically what the changes needed to be.
So you want us to just do it on the 17th?
I would recommend, if it's possible, to add it to the next agenda item and approve it at that time after the board's had a chance to see the changes.
And Ben? Yeah.
We'll make it work.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That makes it easy for you guys, and I'm good with that.
Have we received appropriate direction for it to be official now? Okay.
So I think what we need to do now is public comment. But I wanted to clarify too, because we did have jump to the item 15 and then back to item 14. Just for attendees today, public comment would be on the draft sunset report and the board administrative manual as is, not with necessarily with the changes, and then public comment will be taken separately on agenda item 15 and the recommended changes that appear there. So public comment will just be, currently the public comment will be on the draft report, and then separately we'll have public comment on the changes, the proposed changes to the administrative manual. And then if the board wants to adopt those changes, it can do so by motion at that time.
Okay, I think each time you just have to clarify to the, because that could be good. Open for the public comments? Okay, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Jenny. You're welcome. Board members. So I know I appreciate you guys still either standing or still sitting, waking up. I know we need some sugars, So, but I thought a memory is still fresh. So would you guys be okay? We open up for public comments right now before everyone forget. Yeah, please. A public comment on specifically
Public item
sunset.
14, the sunset
Item 14,
report.
which is the sunset report. So everybody's
Draft.
clear on what we're making public comment about. No?
I don't see public comment.
Going for once, two. Wow.
Sunset report. Comment, so public comment is on the sunset report itself. Yeah, we're gonna have three different public comment sections, right?
So I come in later. It's very tiny. My name is Daisy. Daisy Liu, represented by ASCM organization. So we're very concerned about the actually today your report is really good. We're just really happy for the report. But the part of the sunset report and the national examination and the California examination, so we know it's gonna have for the NCCOM coming to the California. It's not gonna change in 2019. But we still, so in 1 year and a half, we still not yet to get ready to accept that issue, that's truth going to be happen. So because the majority, the acupuncturists in California, we've been research about, we practice here, we know the truth very for sure. So we are not yet to accept the happen. So my organization wish to, if you could make the motion. I don't know, it's not gonna happen, but we still are wishes. If you could make the motion for postpone indefinitely for the national examination coming to California. We don't want to happen like 2019, but if really happen, we ask for the postpone. I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. So because we are not really get ready. Although we still need to get the result about the cost. That's big concern. Also, the education standards are different with different state. Why coming to California? We have the much higher the education standard in California, so needs to like 3,000 hours. But some states only like 2,500 or 2,200 or 2,800. So how can compare to come to California? So examination to even they will take the supplement examination in California in case different state the law. But still, the basic education still we are very concerned because that's a very big risk for the consumer, for the patient. So that's why we are very concerned about that. No matter what, 3,000 hours total different with the 2,200 because we understand the national. The NCCOM, they always say, oh, we will make a high standard. We are much better than before. But maybe in research in the last couple years, no, we don't think so. We don't think so. Even basic, we need to concern the basic education needs to enough to 3,000 hours. Otherwise, it still make a big risk for our consumer, for the patient. So that's what we have major concern today. That's what's my comment. Thank you so much.
Any other comments from the public?
Sunset report draft.
Yeah, just a national exam, just to make sure that we do stay in line with the occupational analysis of California. So that means that their herbal section is 166 formulas, which is double what you require. Plus, you have the 10.5% on our state board exam. So we have to make sure that we're in line with that. And I think that's somewhat of a concern for the educational standpoint, especially if we're 2 years out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No more comments from the draft of the sunset report from public? No? Okay, I guess we want to eat, huh?
Almost.
Let's break.
No, we have just the administrative manual, we're done.
Oh, yes.
And the future agenda items. People can bear with
To the item
Okay.
5 then, 15? Yeah. Let's move to the item 15.
This, we just need, if the board members are okay with it, a motion to approve the administrative manual.
So what you can do is, if anyone wanted to make a motion, they can make the motion, then if someone wanted to second, they can second, and then it would go to the public for comment, and then it would go back to the board to, or to the president to request for a roll call vote on that motion.
Motion?
Item 15.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I make a motion to adopt the change on the support administrative manual.
I second that.
It's Mark. Do the roll call, please.
Public comment.
Public comment.
On the administrative manual.
Item 15.
So the motion on the floor is, I believe Board Member Chan has made a motion to adopt the red line changes to the board administrative manual in item 15.
Seconded by Ruben Osorio.
Okay, well, as just stated, Kipman motions to approve the administrative manual with the changes outlined in the packet here today. Ruben Osorio seconds. The vote, Mateki,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Shea, absent, Kang, Osorio,
Yes.
4-0, motion's adopted.
May I now ask for direction from the board to include the updated administrative manual in our sunset report?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So now we move to the agenda item number 17 for the future meetings. The agenda items is for the future meetings, please.
This is an opportunity for both the board and the public to present future agenda items.
Jacques Marmarco, Empress College. Unfortunately, we're not going to be available on the next meeting. Some of us are out of state for the CCAOM meetings. My main concern on this national exam is also the content, and I think we had talked with the education coordinator, Jay, who's very well aware of some of the individuals that want to include things like Master Dung acupuncture or the 5 elements, which they mislabel as 5 elements acupuncture. It's Worsley style acupuncture. I know the national exam has some questions regarding the Worsley school of acupuncture, and it has nothing to do with TCM. It has absolutely nothing to do with what you present on our exams, which is very comprehensive. That's somewhat of a concern. So we should really have SME that's from California, or maybe your educational coordinator, look at those content of those exams to really determine are those in line with what we ask, and especially the red flags, in the biomedicine section, which is very stringent for California. If they are able to, come up to our standard for those sections. And the herb section, of course, is absolutely not in line with our requirement in terms of double the amount of formulas, and the percentage does not match at all. So, it's your decision, but according to occupation analysis, we're at 10.5% of our exam. So we cannot have the national exam be so stringent and have all those formulas that are not used in California, and have an extremely long list of single herb and their identification and usage, which is really not used in our state board exam. So I think we really need to look at that for future agenda item before you implement it, whenever you decide to do so. And just one more thing is the online CUs, but we've gone over that already. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As a point of order, I might recommend that maybe the board members discuss what they want to see on future agenda items, they take away from today's discussion, and then figure those out, and then afterwards take public comment on what public might want to see on the future agenda. And just to kind of continue off of what we just heard, I heard, I think maybe 3 public comments today about the national exam versus the California exam. So, I might recommend that might be something to put on a future agenda.
Is that something that I can motion on, or we discuss it first?
We discuss it.
Discuss.
Okay.
And point of order, the board still has to have OPES review NCCAOM's newest job analysis, which is about to be released. So we hope to see OPES review this. Perhaps that might inform any further future agenda item discussion on several of the items that Dr. Marmarco presented. So, and when we're
Any other comments from the public?
Well,
start with the board.
Okay.
so I guess right now for agenda item 17, the board will discuss what they want to see on future agendas, the next agenda essentially, and then kind of once the board's finished discussing what they want to see on the next agenda, so that staff can begin working on that agenda, then we can open up for public comment on what the public would like to see.
Madam President, if I may have that. Yes. I want to remind the board members that there were the items in the Sunset Report for issues number 2 and 3 of section 11 that would require a board vote to support any of those suggested policies. So we would have to have a discussion on these 7 items.
Which items?
Pages 62 and 63 of the draft Sunset Report.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So these were new issues that were identified by the board in this report. So
I
these
see.
were actually issues identified by staff
Right.
that will not go into the report unless the board votes that this is their position. And so if you want this to actually be in this report, then these items have to be discussed separately at the next board meeting to include in this report.
Well, issue number one, like Mark said, is an update, so. I
True,
don't-
so it's everything in items 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think number one is fine, number two, yeah. I think they're fine.
And just to clarify, the board would be requesting me to put this on the agenda.
Yes.
That's what I'm waiting to hear, if you want me to.
Yes, I am
entertain this.
requesting, Ben,
Thank you.
that issue, new issue number one be on the agenda,
Okay.
correct?
First bullet of number 2, is that what you're talking about? Uh-huh. You're
And then the
requesting
first
that.
bullet, the second bullet, and let's see, let's go over the third bullet. Yeah, third bullet is fine. Yeah, I think the third bullet is an important one. I think there's something that we need to address. So whether it's the increasing the CE provider oversight as well as the TOEFL, these are things, yes, I would agree. I would request.
Thank you so much. I will look into this.
Thank you. And then 4 is, okay, yeah. Also 4?
No, that's
That
for the
doesn't-
committee
that
to bring
doesn't
to our
need to be-
attention,
got it.
which we will probably see at the
Yeah.
hearing. Outside of those, are there any additional agenda items the board would like to see at the next meeting? Presently scheduled for November 17th.
No, I think that's good.
I wanted to ask, Board Member King, during the board meeting, you had asked a question about a better way to handle address violations, and I just wanted to ask whether that was something that you wanted to see on a future agenda, or?
I would like to hear from, is it Christine that's in charge of that section, or who is in charge of that part? Would it be you, Christine? Yeah, I just, because of that part of the report, if it makes more sense and it's more time efficient for us to put it back online after we get Breeze, right? Because it's all about, because we're like one of the last boards that's still not on Breeze, correct?
Correct.
Because a lot of the boards are already on Breeze. So once Breeze comes on, if it makes sense for us to put that back online for it to be more time efficient, then I think that's something that part of the online movement that's happening, you know. I think that would be relevant. I'm not sure if at this point, Salwa, if that's something that needs to be agendized.
Okay.
Yeah. Because Breeze has its own timeline.
And did the board want to add anything on the future agenda about the questions we've received about the national versus California exam? And if the board is unclear about exactly what the question is, I mean, we could invite the comment from, I think, the original public member who brought up the issue, if the board needs any clarification on what that future agenda item would be.
I think the board is pretty clear. I think what happened, I remember speaking with Daisy and a couple other people several years ago. In the June of,
Well, I think for today's purposes, because it's not agendized, we can't go into the substance of the issue and discuss it, but we can talk about whether or not it can be on the future
the board
agenda.
is clear on what we stated here, or have been stating in the last couple of years.
You mean we don't change anything, or we discussed it? When you say clear, is the way it's been?
Do you want to clarify?
Well, I guess just the basic question is, if the board's heard several public comments about this national versus California exam issue, so it's just the board's decision about whether, and you don't have to consider it, it's just a recommendation since we've heard a few public comments, whether or not you want to have this, the item presented to the board discussed at a future board meeting. That's essentially the only question, before the board. But if the board feels that a further discussion and time taken at the next board meeting on that topic is not necessary, then it doesn't need to be included on the next board meeting's agenda.
I don't know, the full board isn't here, but I think we have had pretty much enough discussion on it. And, I mean, Amy can comment as well, but I don't think we need to.
Yeah, yeah.
You could
I
ask,
did,
you
yeah.
could ask Ben for further information.
Okay, if I can be debrief of this and then.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay, I guess I don't know how far the discussion can go, but I guess I can.
Well, and again, as I pointed out earlier, we can definitely have this discussion in terms of for the next meeting. It may not behoove us to have that discussion then, since we'll be working to finalize our sunset report. However, we are awaiting OPES, is the Office of Professional
Right.
Examination Service, second audit of the most recent NCCOM analysis. So the board can decide whether or not they want to have a discussion before that or have a more informed discussion after that, whether we're reviewing that. So
I think what should be the priority, we take care of the sunset report first.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to take care of it.
And then we talk about it, because probably the next meeting, we need more time or change or whatever.
Right.
Okay, so I think we will do the sunset report first, and then talk about it later.
okay, exam later,
Stay
sunset first.
focused, yeah.
Another item that was presented during public comment was the requirements for being physically present for classes versus online classes. And so I just wanted to present that to the board to consider whether or not they would want to see that on future agenda.
And just to clarify, that was regarding continuing education, not the qualifying curriculum, correct?
Honestly, can't.
Well, there was 2 points. One was the stakeholder meeting where we discussed the online education. The other was the point brought by Dr. Morimarco in regards to really looking at the continuing education model of online education.
I think also, because there's been change in leadership, those discussions previously have gone to committee and have been given to the appropriate committees to discuss, then to be brought to the board. So it's nothing that the board needs to decide right now, in my opinion. Those topics that you just mentioned, that's how this whole, the physically present came up. It happened in the committees. Those discussions came up in the committees, and we had a lot of discussions in the committees. And we haven't even formed the committees yet. We don't even know who the committee chairs are at this point. So we can, once the committees and the committee's chairs are decided, then those questions that SAWA has should be appropriated to the committees, discuss it there, then brought up back to the board.
In light of that, if I may recommend that we can go ahead and send those to these committees, those items to the committees.
But not the current ones. The
Okay.
current, because Amy has to discuss the current committees and give the
Assignments.
chair assignments, yeah.
Okay. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would just say add to the next board meeting, maybe we will add the new assignment for the committee
Okay.
members. So we will add it to the agenda for the committee members.
That's good.
Yeah, for November.
Another item was, I think, Jay Hurt was going to present on the new application for board curriculum approval. So since that wasn't agendized today, then possibly the board can consider whether or not the impression I'm getting, and of course, the board has a full plate with the sunset report coming up for the next meeting, but for consideration, whether or not the board would like to have that on the next agenda.
Yeah, because you didn't get to talk about it, because it was a typo,
Right.
correct? Okay, so
Well, I can just include that in my next education report.
that's fine. That'd be good, yeah.
Sans typo,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
And I think Jeannie had a question about DOCM during the board meeting, so I didn't know, if that was it DOCM or was it ACOM? Was it a question about ACOM? I apologize.
About it.
In terms of, we're finding the appropriate number of institutions versus programs they've approved? Was that the discussion?
If that was the issue, then I think that was just to edit to the sunset
I think the
report.
staff just can edit that, yeah, that's no agenda item there.
No other future agenda items from?
All I've got.
Sawa, right on, I like it.
now for the public.
Now we're open for the public. Any comments from the public?
Agenda items. Pardon.
Agenda. Yes, public for the future agenda item.
I'm Jun Jiao. I'm an acupuncturist and just a representative for the AACMA and hundreds of acupuncturists. So as we know, already talked about the two examining, and you already have put for next future meeting for discuss this. So we already know the examining it's any concern about the qualities and fees and whatever. So our association try to do is this for future meeting that we are requesting for. We wish to address to these issues of the exam quality and California consumer concerns, primary care provider, California concerns, integrative practitioners, and California practitioners concern fees, and California practitioners concern about reciprocity. That's all we want to know. Okay.
Could you tell us what AACMA stands for?
AACMA is Association of Acupuncture. What's acupuncture?
Yeah.
It's American Association of Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture.
Thank you.
It's,
I'm not sure if you guys are on our website. Please submit, if you have the time, submit information to us so that we can also list you on our website.
Okay.
Again, my name is Daisy, represented by ASCM. Except Dr. Xiajun Zhao, the requirement, next time, like my organization requires in future with agenda for the national examination, the issues, and the California examination issues. That is number one. Number two, I really strong wish in the future agenda. Also, I hope acupuncture board always keep watch something like physical therapy, use the dry needles issues, chiropractors, because now it's been getting worse in the states, in the country. Every state something happen. So I just remind acupuncture board in the future, in the agenda, keep talking about the issue, then we can working together better for watch somebody illegally use acupuncture needle to practice the patient. That's very, very bad and not have risk damage the Chinese medicine, the name. So we want to protect our patient. So wish in the future agenda always keep watching, talk about the message. That's important. I try every time if I come into the meeting, bring more the message about what happened in the nation, what state, because we watch every day. We have the WeChat group. We get information all the time, so we know it's really, really, really like risk the time right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wei Wei, also from American Association of Chinese Medicine and Acupuncture. And I would like to see a stakeholders meeting, maybe pretty quickly to discuss more about the examination, whether we should continue to use the CAL exam or the NCCA-OMC exam, because I think we should, in that stakeholders meeting, we should invite the consumers to come and let them know what's going on and we should discuss how to merge the two exams together. And also, I would like to let the board members to I think you all know already, but just a quick reminder that in California, the acupuncturists, we are primary care physicians, so our education is pretty high in the nation, and that's why our CAL exam can really reflect the education that we have. And if we use the NCC-AOM's exam, of course, one of the big problem to me is they break down acupuncture and Chinese medicine into 4 pieces, and that's not right for the integrity of Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And the one exam in CAL, it really reflects the need, and it also gives the best protection to our consumers' safety, because if one person can pass the CAL exam, that really means he or she has the knowledge and can really use this ancient medicine to help patients, and very safely to use it in a much safer way too. So that's one thing I would like to see a stakeholders meeting soon. And the other is about the unlicensed practice of acupuncture, and I like the board to maybe watch it more closely for some kind of training outside. Right now, they only maybe 50 hours or 20 hours, sometimes just the training, and then they will let this practitioners to say use ear points and some other certain points to treat some conditions. That's obviously a very dangerous practice of acupuncture. It can be risky, to consumers. And then the other thing is about scope of practice. We'd like to see how can we in our scope of practice, put in the manual therapy into this scope of practice, because a lot of us, we actually perform massage, or we perform the oriental massage, so-called as acupressure. And to a lot of insurance companies, they don't understand what's acupressure. If we say it's manual therapy, and we can use the code 97140, the CPT code, and it's better communication to the insurance company, and also reflects what we have learned in schools too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? No?
At this point, the board can either resume discussion on future agenda items, or the board can adjourn if there's no further comments needed, or no one wanted to make any further comments.
I think the November 14th is really just for us to finish up the sunset report and make sure that gets approved and everything. So I think we should keep it simple.
And just to clarify, that's November 17th.
November 7th, what did I say? 7th. Oh, my mind is 17th. Yeah, 17th. Yes.
Well, I agree, Jeannie. I think 17th, there's a lot time pressure. We probably concentrate on the sunset report. So we can talk about the future agenda from the public. We can put on the future. All right, so we will adjourn for today. Adjourn.
Thank you.
1:20.